I wanted to welcome everybody to our Monday, February 12th meeting of the Curriculum Committee of the School Board. I'm happy to see a lot of new faces in here just so that everybody has an idea of the way things go. First, we review our proposals for contracts, and then we're going to go through some pre-scheduled presentations about different programs that are working through the district, and then we'll open it up to public comment. If you wanted to make a public comment, you can go ahead, the sign-up sheet's right at the podium. You can sign up with Ms. LaPera, and she will call you when it's time for community comment at the end. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak and will be asked to say your name and where in the district you reside. I'm sorry, what? Oh, no, in this, we let people speak more than 3 minutes.
More of dialogue, so.
You can have more than 3 minutes to speak. I will ask at certain points after the presentations for community comment, those will be restricted at that first point to the topics we're discussing at that point, and then we'll open it up to general discussion. So I will hand it over to Dr. McGloin to discuss our contracts. First, we're going to review a proposal on a consulting agreement for Tori Maldonado.
Thank you. So we have 2 contracts on the agenda that we want to move forward to the board. First one is Tori Maldonado. He's an author, and he is set to come visit our 3 middle schools 1 day each in each of the middle schools. As part of Black History Month, we have an African American reading event that every single year we bring in authors for. This is our author for this school year. He'll be working with 7th and 8th grade students, and doing a workshop with them, a reader's workshop with them, a Q&A, going over, he's written many novels, going through the novels that he's written as well. And so this is our author that we're bringing in this year. It's $11,000 between the 3 schools, so we pulled it together, which is why you see it on the agenda. Sometimes you know how you see them just come across. By school, we actually pulled them together, and so that's why you see that on the agenda.
Do we have any questions from the group? Okay, I don't have any questions. I just want to say that that sounds great, and I'd also love to continue seeing authors of color in months that aren't Black History Month also throughout the year. And that sounds good. I think we can move that forward for our next, for voting at our general meeting. And the next, we want to discuss a 3-year quote from Linkit for online reporting data, warehousing, and intervention management for 1 year.
Yeah, okay, so you've heard us use the term illuminate. And we would like to move away from illuminate. Linkit was actually one of the products that we evaluated when we evaluated Illuminate as our data management system. The reason we didn't go with Linkit at that time was they were just building their MTSS side of the platform. It's 3 years down the road, and that side of the platform is amazing now. We have bumps in the road with Illuminate, truly. I mean, it's been hard to get our data in, and there's 2 different systems, and the company got sold. So when things get sold, sometimes it's just not as good as it was intended to be. And so we're trying to move to a platform that we know will be much more user-friendly. I have experience with it. Dr. Yanni has experience with it. We both used it in prior districts, and it has gone off seamlessly in the district I was in. And Dr. Yanni could speak to his district as well, but truly no issues with the interface, and their customer service is amazing. In fact, the president of the company has been on every single one of my calls while I was talking to them this spring, actually through the winter as well. So what we're looking to do is move to Linkit. We have a 3-year contract on the agenda for it. We actually will do a soft start before the contract kicks in, which is in June. Right now, we would start working with them. They're going to start pulling our data in. We're going to do some tests in there so that we have our own staff trained even before we go into the rollout. The first year of the product will be paid through the ESSER grant. We're going to divert some funds that we were going to use for math supplement and instead use it for this. And so that 103,315 is actually not going to be funded through the district, but instead be funded through a grant to pay for this first year of the contract. So we're looking to move this forward and bring in a different system than what we currently have for our data management.
I just have a few points to add. So our teachers and our leaders, building leaders and central office leaders, everyone has a finite amount of time. And what Linkit does is it will allow us to be much more efficient with how we upload student data, how we pull data, how we make instructional decisions about it. We have the ability to build assessments in there so that teachers can have real-time access to data, that they don't have to wait As Dr. McGloin said, we both have experience using it. More than half of Montgomery County school districts are using it. The thing that I like the best about it, it's intuitive. So as our building leaders and other administrators and teachers get into the system, it's not a cumbersome system that teachers have to learn how to navigate. It's very, very easy to use. And I think it's going to propel us forward as we think about making some instructions for kids needing enrichment, acceleration, and remediation instructionally. So I'm excited about this. The fact that they're basically giving us first couple months free as they transition us on. And that's creating a mutually beneficial relationship. They want Lower Merion as a customer as much as we want to be a customer of theirs. So as Dr. McGloin said, the CEO, Ryan Winter, is truly customer first. So I've worked with him for 7 or 8 years now. There has never been a time that either I or someone on my team have reached out with a need or a want where we weren't able to get exactly what it was that we needed. So I think this is going to be a great win for our teachers and our administrators and our ultimately our K-12 programming.
Can I just back you up for a second and have you give like a 1 or 2 sentence explanation of what the purpose of this program is?
So what Linkit will do is it will house all of our student data. So our students' PSSA data, Keystone data, SAT, ACT, but it will also house our common assessments and other assessments that we do so that when we sit down to have a meeting to talk about interventions or enrichment for kids, we have all of the data that we need at our fingertips. We don't have to hunt for data. The current system that we're using now, Illuminate, because it was bought out by another company, it never evolved into what it was supposed to be. So what Linkit will do is give teachers real-time access to data that they can make decisions about.
So is it available at like the classroom data? If I'm Ms. Kalish and I'm giving my 3rd graders a spelling test, do I enter that in there? And then can you, Mr. Yanni, with the other with their 4th grade class, see that when they move up?
Yeah, so we'll be talking about what assessments go in there. We'll definitely be putting our common assessments in. It's easy for teachers to put entry in. It also talks to PowerSchool, our student information system, so teachers won't have to do double entry. There's a pass back.
Right, and it also has the MTSS side to it too, right? So it's not just about the data. The other piece of it is our tips form that we used. You'll hear a little bit about this tonight, but we've talked about tips before, which is our protocol that we use to do data analysis. So we could set that up on the other side. We can group students by intervention groups on the intervention side of it. And so it's an intervention management system as well. It's double, twofold, which is, we really liked it a lot when we looked at that new part of it.
I just have a question in terms of how it's going to be funded. So you said the ESSER grant is this year. How does it go forward?
It'll be in my budget after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And really, the funds, it would have been the funds that we would have devoted to Illuminate. We'll just, yeah, so it'll, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just real quick, so is our Illuminate contract up at the end of this year?
It is, yes.
And how does it compare pricing-wise to Illuminate?
They're relatively close in price. There wasn't a big difference between Linkit and Illuminate when I looked at the costs. Yeah.
Okay.
It's roughly about $70,000 a year. Typically with products like this, you pay a price per student in the district, so it fluctuates a little bit. But in terms of these types of programs, economical and what you get for the cost, it's a in my view and in our view, a good investment.
And thanks, because everybody was asking all the questions I have listed, so there'll be less. So, did you say it's relatively new, the program?
The MTSS piece of it. So when I've used Linkit in my past experience, they didn't have that side built yet. The intervention management piece of it was not built. It was just solely a data warehouse for us, which was, it really, they do a nice job. They, because they're have so many clients in Pennsylvania, they work really well with the state as well. So there's a lot of seamless integration that that exists because of that, but they did not have that intervention side. So when we looked 3 years ago, when we were evaluating products, the Illuminate platform really was so much more robust. They were just building that up at that point, and now it's just, it's come so far since those 3 years. Yeah.
Got it. Was there a startup cost for Illuminate, or was it a flat fee each year of 70,000?
There was a startup cost that we paid in the Illuminate. I can get that for the board, but there was, when I looked at the contract, there was a startup cost to take our data from the previous system, which was Performance Tracker, and move it into Illuminate.
Will that happen again?
Yeah, so that the startup cost, what you see there tonight on the motion, Linkit will actually take, they're going to take 3 years of our data over. All of the other data will be frozen in time so that if we need to access it for students' IEPs, et cetera, we'll have access to it, but 2 or 3 years of worth of data will be migrated by Linkit.
So the first year of the contract is the most at 103,000. Then it goes down to 95,000 the next year because we don't have the training and the starter fees that are associated with it.
Got it. I mean, I think you're right, I heard Illuminate for the last 2.5 years. So for me, I would really want to understand, I recognize buying software and then the company doesn't say what they've done, and then it's called Altru. It's a blackballed product. It's the worst thing in the world, and it's exactly what they did to us, and it's a really big commitment. But I'd like to understand kind of the work and the energy and the impact that was done on Illuminate, and why we're not going to see this kind of falter again into this system. Also, could you share with everybody what is MTSS? And then I would like to know how we're going to be able to look at students' grades and connected to behaviors, and then how are we supporting the staff, like Mrs. Kalish in third grade, whatever, to say, okay, notice this pattern that every single day at this time, or every single time we have a word problem in any class, we're seeing this behavior.
So I can talk about the difference between Illuminate and Linkit. So there are these broad frameworks in
In what?
I've been jokingly calling it Illusionate because it has never manifested the way that it was supposed to. So I wasn't going to say that, but
But you did.
and you have to build these specific frameworks. In Linkit, because Linkit works so closely with the state, there are frameworks that are already built in there. There are assessments that are already built in there that we can use that pull from our standards. So it's built in Pennsylvania for Pennsylvania school districts, and so it's customizable. What I've said to the CEO is, it's great that we have the academic side, we want the behavior side. So there's a functionality inside this program called Data Locker that we can build how we want it to report out student behavior, major behavioral infractions, minor behavioral infractions, and also positive behavior as well. So then at any time, you could go into the Data Locker and pull, let's say we pull Alexis McGloin's data. We could see all of her academics. We could see all of her behavior on something called a fingertip report. And that fingertip report can be imported into a student's IEP. It could be added to a report card because there's passback with all of the systems. So what Illuminate never talked to any of the other systems that we were using. And so it took a lot of time to build the frameworks and get the data in, and it was hard to pull the data back out in a usable way. Where Linkit, it's visual, and you can get as granular as you want with the data.
MTSS is multi-tier systems of support. And actually, we're kind of leading into our second presentation, which is PBIS, Positive Behavior Intervention Supports. You'll see that later on. And it's all about that other side of the MTSS triangle. We've talked a lot about academics, right? When we're talking about looking at data and interventions, when we're talking about PBIS today, you'll see some of the work that we've done on the back end about minor and major infractions. Dr. Yanni was just just mentioning that, you're going to see the chart that our administrative team has worked on, and then how does that translate to a school? The goal would be that you're able to see what's happening if you're pulling your data correctly, and hopefully we'll see that in the data locker. So we have a bunch of different things happening on the playground. We know we want to do some education for students about how do they behave appropriately on the playground, because that's a hot spot, let's call it, right? And so that's the ultimate goal of being able to pull the data out of it as well. The high school, which I love about this product, Link It, which doesn't exist in Illuminate, but it was something we were able to add on to. It was like a graduation package. It tracks the 339 data, which is that graduation requirement, but it also creates a dashboard for our high school administrators. And really, when you're looking at at-risk students at the high school level, it's about attendance, it's about grades, and it's about behavior. They're your three big ticket items, and that's how you really track high-risk behaviors at the high school, and they have that in the product. So I was really excited about that piece of it, because it's been a conversation with the high school principals, but we haven't been able to pull it all together, and now we can.
Okay, two more questions real quick. I would like some kind of documentation on why we stepped away from Illuminate, just to, especially with the finance committee, because, you know, I remember this, you remember it for 2 years, but, and Kimberly does, but not everybody does. So it's nice if somebody goes back in 6 years and say, this is the issues that we had with you. Have you changed your product? Because they'll tell you yes, but that doesn't mean they actually have. So I think documenting it would be helpful. Two real quick questions. Is there any buyout for Illuminate to end the contract after 3 years? There's no, we're locked in? Nope. Okay. And then second question, and this is going to sound way more accusatory than I mean it to sound, so I kind of want to preface it with, can you look backwards, not at what the child's behavior are, but if there's certain behaviors associated with a classroom or a section of the playground? So like, can you reverse engineer it to say, maybe it's not the kids, maybe it's actually the environment that they're in, that all these kids are walking in and this lighting system, this.
That's exactly what is going to be built in there so that you can look at trends, right? Because so many times we focus on what a student did and we don't always go back to say, but if you take a look, it's, you know, it's this corner of the playground, or it's this equipment, or it's around 2:30 every single day. So we can look back, and that's the beauty of the data locker. That's how granular you can get with the data.
Thanks. Just to piggyback on that, I
Oh, I'm
think.
sorry, I had a
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry.
A couple of questions, actually. Is this the last year for the ESSER grant?
Yes.
And how much are we receiving this year?
So it was not by year, it was an overall grant total for the 3 years.
I
So-
see.
Yeah, so we've spent most of the grant money at this point. I think we have about $180,000 left in the grant.
About 180 left. I'm just curious about this data locker. Who else could potentially have access to this information?
So as you know, our district is more locked down than any other district that I've ever worked in in terms of technology. They ran all the PIN tests. It's as secure or more secure as Power School is. So we'll be setting the permission. So it's not going to be a system that, you know, for example, you as a board member would not have access to this system. The permissions are set by employee type. And that'll be managed just like it is for our student information system.
And what about parents? Do they have access to information that you're gathering about their children?
There is a parent portal that we can add if, at some point, if we want. I used it in my last district, but that's another product. We're not looking to add anything on to parents right now. This is more for internal work that we're doing.
Thank you.
I'll just jump in and say back to what Dr. Sotner was saying, that I think it could also be a helpful tool as teachers are putting together, especially at the lower grades, putting together classes for the upcoming year. If we can look and see if there are particular groups of kids that work really well together, or it's the proximity of two different personalities that don't work particularly well together, and try to help build our class coalitions in that manner.
I just want to say, just as a general statement, I'm never going to bring something to the board that I have concerns that data privacy could be compromised. And this product has been vetted by so many districts, not just regionally, but across the state. I'm infinitely confident that it'll be used much better, and it will become one of the seminal tools we use as we plan for instruction and plan units and to Dr. Sodner's point and to your point about reverse engineering and looking where things, looking for trends in data.
Yeah, I appreciate you bearing with all our questions on this one. It's a big ticket item, so I thought it bore a lot of worth in diving deeper. But I think if everyone's good moving that forward to the full board, yes? Yeah, yeah, okay. Then that is great, and we will get started on our presentations. Our first presentation is revolutionizing student learning inside the development of a transformative and integrated student-centered curriculum. So if we could have Dr. Martin Patone up here, that would be fantastic.
And she also has some of our staff members joining her. That was a big mouthful,
Her merry
right?
band.
But you're gonna be really.
Many helpers. Welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome to our new and familiar faces. Just remember to, when you're speaking, hit your little button there, and when you're not, turn it off, because if we have too many on, it gets weird feedback, that's all. So go for it.
So tonight we have Dr. Martin Bertone, we have Shana Ash and Michael Tavani, and then Kaisa Thompson and Drew Gingrich joining us today to talk about the work that they've done this summer. We're really proud of the time and effort and work that they've been doing towards moving to a humanities curriculum K-12, K-6.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us here and giving us this opportunity to talk to you about the work that's taking shape and taking place in our school district. I am extremely grateful to sit beside these outstanding educators and humans as we talk about the work that is happening. As I said, they're going to do most of the speaking. I'm just going to set them up for all the things they're going to share. When we started to do this work, this is just a visual of the process that took place. We are in the second year of this work. We decided that curriculum would be the vehicle. It is the touch point. It's the living, breathing document that all educators use, administrators use, that show us not only what we teach, but to what degree and when we teach it. We decided that is the place where the touch point for creating these transformative and inclusive learning experiences, it needs to live in those documents. What was crucial is understanding the why and the context of what was taking place at that time in our district. That'll be the quick next slide. In terms of the standards, we do have PA core standards, but we were really focused upon not getting used by the standards, that we got to look at the standards and say, how do we wish to use them so that they're rich and meaningful learning experiences. And then that summer and this coming summer, we do our own curriculum audit, which we will speak to, and that is where we use several documents, but that is the place where this reflective work begins each year. So you can turn on. Really quickly, this is the context of when, behind the why, when we created the space for the dialogue with teachers to do this work, it was important that we all had a shared understanding of what was taking shape in the district, what existed, such as the DEIB policy, the curriculum cycle, which was new to reflect the district restructure, and the K-4 and the 5-6 vertical groupings. And we wanted to be mindful of all of the work that was in the All Forward strategic plan, while also being mindful of the multiple pathways for learning. This came to be the transformative curriculum, which I'm going to have Drew speak to. When we say transformative curriculum, what do we mean by that? Go back for 1 second.
Perfect. So for this transformative curriculum, I think too often schools can feel like spaces where we enter into classrooms, we enter into those four walls, and we engage in learning exercises or activities that are rooted in standards, but they're actually removed from the lives of the learner. So when they exit those classrooms, it's not this transformational experience. It's not a learning experience that leaves and walks away with the student as they exit the classroom and they go about living their lives. So this work that we were doing was really thinking about how do we create a space where standards are at the forefront, but as students leave, they're left with an opportunity to think about the standards, the academic content they're learning, themselves, others, and the world around them. In this way, education has consequences for the way learners wrestle with knowledge and information as academics and learners, but also with how they choose to act and interact in the world, living their lives. So to root this work, we're looking at these 4 boxes here, and I'm going to actually start in the bottom right with the SAS website from PDE. So the most important place to start this work is rooting in standards. What are the academic responsibilities we have as educators and teachers for our students? And what's really revolutionary about this is in a lot of spaces we stop there. What are the standards we're teaching? And we stop at that box. Through this work, we shift over to the box in the bottom left-hand corner where we think about Danielson's framework and what are the best instructional practices and professional practices that educators have, which takes us to the top left box where we start thinking about what does it mean to be a culturally relevant and a culturally sustaining educator. These are also competencies that guide our practices. All of this leads to the top right box, the education we offer here at Lower Merion School District. How are we making sure that we have a scope and sequence that is logical and rigorous, that we're focusing our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging efforts in our content, but it's a curriculum that's built for inside the classroom that has consequences for outside of the classroom.
Okay, so this summer we got together in a curriculum cadre is what we called it, and we met for about a week in June and leading into July, and we had teachers from K through 6, and I think it was probably more work than we expected it was going to be, but it was really meaningful. It was like powerful work. I think every teacher who was part of it really felt like they walked away with it really something deep, and it gave us the opportunity to kind of meet with teachers from K through 6, look across horizontally at all the standards that we're teaching throughout the school year, but then also look vertically as we're going up and down K through 6 to see, oh, wow, you're teaching this in 2nd grade, you're teaching this in 4th grade, this is where you're going in 6th grade. So it gave all of us a really good picture of where we fit in to the puzzle as instructors with the students. And so we were able to do this with both ELA and social studies. And that's where we came up with the idea of like, how do we connect these things with calling it humanities? And so with the idea of humanities, we also took some opportunities during this year to figure out how do we look at this as an integrative curriculum? How do we have an interdisciplinary approach? I think like most educators that you'll say will say, oh, it makes a lot of sense. It's really beneficial to have an interdisciplinary approach. But the reality is, I think with every subject area is going to have its own constraints with its standards, and every teacher feels their own responsibilities towards the curriculum. It's kind of hard to put into practice a lot of times. So we sat together, we tried to figure out, well, can we use ELA, English Language Arts and Social Studies, as an entry point into this? It's an obvious way to do it. It makes a lot of sense because there's so many of the skills that go back and forth with ELA and Social Studies. So that is how we looked at our curriculum. And up here we have in the presentation, there's a video where the teachers can access it and see how to make it work and why it would make sense to make it work so the teachers can buy into it as well. And then, so in 5th grade, for example, so as a 5th grade teacher, we were looking at how do we actually get this into practice? How do we start making it happen? So we start doing this by selecting novels that we would use in the ELA class. And so during ELA, we're reading these novels with the students, and we're focusing on all the literary skills that you typically would with any ELA curriculum. So we're focusing on characters, on setting, point of view, theme, typical things that we would do. Then in social studies, we kind of go back to these novels and these characters, these experiences and stories, and apply them to the more social studies relevant content. So things like, for example, we read a book in the beginning of the year, Front Desk by Kelly Yang. All the 5th graders in Lower Merion read the same novel. So in ELA, we're reading it, we're getting to know the characters and going through all the typical things. But then in social studies, it opened up the conversation to things like immigration, things like geography, because the main character in the story, her name is Mia, and she is immigrating from China. And as she's getting comfortable with America herself and her own experience, we start asking questions in social studies. Well, what is America? What are the values of America? What does it mean to be American? What are the people like in America? So the students are learning along with the character in ELA in social studies for the bigger questions. And currently we're doing it with another novel. It's called Bluebirds by Caroline Starr Rose. Well, this one takes us back in time to the early colonial times in America, where you're learning perspectives of what it was like to be a Native American character and person, and an English colonial colonist and person. So the kids are now asking bigger questions about what is America's history? How do I look and learn through other people's perspectives? And I think what we're finding is the more that they're getting familiar with the characters in the stories, and they hear them in social studies, they can kind of see that all these things can kind of work together. They get to know the characters a little bit more. We can refer to them. And I think it makes it for a lot more of a deeper experience for the kids, and it just becomes more fluid instead of kind of the siloed experience that we're used to when it goes from period to period.
So as you look at the document on the screen right now, you'll see this is a snapshot of what a curricular document would look like for a fifth grade classroom. So in the far left, we see the I can statements and learning targets. It was really important as these documents were being created, they were accessible to all teachers, regardless of entry point. So if a new teacher came into the grade level, would they be able to understand and prioritize? Here are the standards which we are currently using. Here's how we're applying them with our guaranteed learning experiences. So if you look in the Guaranteed Common Learning Experience column, that is the core text that we were using at the beginning of the year front desk. Pacing is included. It ties right into the skill. There's graphic organizers that are suggested for how you can be scaffolding your instruction. And then also built in are questions and additional resources, whether it be extensions and enrichments or differentiation that is needed for other learners as well. Grammar, vocabulary, it's really a one-stop shop. It's a roadmap, and yet we're not route by route directions, right? So it really provides, I think, all teachers and also other areas of instruction as well. We share this out across the grade level. So art, music, gym, all specialists can use this as well as a resource, which is really helpful in addition to special education teachers. And they can scaffold their instruction as well, so it's appropriate for all learners and it's accessible. One thing that I think we're so proud of with this curriculum is that we've been able to provide our students with really meaningful, rich, deep experiences that extend beyond the walls of our classroom. So for example, just today, fifth grade across the district had a Zoom with Kelly Yang, and she was able to speak to her work as a writer and a reader. And I really find that it's through not just what we're reading, but how we're reading it and the dialogues and conversations, those process pieces, that the students are walking away and they're realizing this goes beyond what we're learning today in the classroom. This is how she's applying this to every aspect of her life. And seeing this rich text written by authors that are so diverse, a light bulb goes off. Students see themselves in these authors as well. And I think that's so important as we're looking at our text to make sure that they're relevant to all of our students. We have such a diverse student population, and we can't just be teaching to one student, right? And as our student population changes, our curriculum has to change as well and evolve with time. Another thing that we're really proud of with the curriculum is it's fluid. So it is really possible for us to say, this worked, this didn't work. We can talk about it. That's one of the things we do every professional development. We meet as PLCs in our building across the district, and we say, we need to go back to this. We need to revisit it. Maybe we need to add in another text. We're seeing this doesn't hit in the same way. So when I say it's created by teachers for teachers, I truly mean that as we're getting input for what works or what is needed, we go into these documents. That's the beauty of a shared drive, right? We continuously are adding in resources, and we're only as valuable as all the teachers that make up our district and the students and all of our support as well.
So, and there might be one more, but could you just go forward?
Did you go, yeah, the back? This one. You want to speak to?
And if not, no worries, I can. Perfect, perfect. So,
The board has it on our version.
Perfect,
so
okay.
We see it.
so to work with fifth grade, we sat down and we used the New York, NYU University has a culturally responsive curriculum scorecard. And we looked at the texts that were being used and said, how can we build text sets, multimodal text sets that are meeting the 21st century literacy experience of students? And when we were looking at focus texts or fulcrum texts, these are the texts that are the anchors in units, saying what are the themes that emerge and what are texts that we can layer in and offer in to really either build background knowledge for students or extend student thinking. So we worked with fifth grade and grade level teams and curriculum cadre members to identify elements that would bring a DEIB lens to these text sets. How are we really bringing that to the forefront of the text that we're using? And when we do that, these texts not only extend and supplement, but they bring back again this nature of not just saying what are the academic skills we're teaching, but how are these texts giving you mirrors and windows into the world? And you can see here, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the work of Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop.
I just wrote that down. I'm like, oh my God, they're doing that.
Yes. Yes. So we talk about the importance of making sure that all students have mirrors where they see themselves reflected, and we know the damage of someone not being affirmed when they don't see themselves in their curriculum. But also, all students need diverse books. Not just diverse students, all students need diverse books because it offers windows onto reality, not just on imaginary worlds. They need books that will help them understand the multicultural nature of the world they live in and their place as a member of just one group, as well as their connections to all other human beings. And when we're getting to that space, when we're picking those texts that offer those mirrors and windows, we're opening those sliding glass doors for students to connect as human beings in a diverse community.
So I think a common thing that you're hearing tonight is the community piece and how do we do that? And I wanted to speak to kind of what happens at the elementary level. Much of the elementary academic standards when it comes to social studies are broken down into these 4 pillars. And we really, I think a lot of times with social studies, we think of that social studies, you're just learning the history of something. And at elementary level, it's really the civics and the government standards are what shines through. And that's something that we looked at after we went through our ELA standards and prioritized them and sequenced them. We looked, how can we be integrating in these civic standards to really bring to what everyone's been speaking to tonight, that core of the community. How do we develop, and that's the joy of the elementary school classroom, is that they're with you all day and you create this little micro community and then that larger community, and that they carry from year to year that they're proud that they were in so-and-so's class or they're from this school and so on and so forth. Myself, I am a product of the school district and I wear that very proudly. And I give a lot of credit to the teachers and they're instilling in us this sense of community. So if you look at the standards, I highlighted a sequence, you'll see these are grades 2, 3, and 4, but these ones are bringing back to the purposes of rules and consequences and establishing what's my role. And on the next, you'll see fairness coming up. And these are big things that we speak about in the elementary world. And on this slide, you'll see again, that common language of community, describe how citizens participate in school and community events like Drew is speaking to. How can we take what's being learned in the classroom to develop our students to be great citizens of the world? So we looked at, you can go to the next slide, we looked at how are we integrating these standards into the elementary school day. So we've highlighted some examples here. So every elementary school classroom, you're starting the day with a daily morning meeting. And the tenets of the morning meeting are broken into 4 component parts. Your greeting, every student is greeted every morning, their name is said, to feel that sense of belonging. There's opportunities for shares. Those can be scripted shares of what's your favorite color, to it expands beyond does someone have something you want to share today? Activities, that's your opportunity to authentically be teaching rules, fairness, responsibility for yourselves, to be able to extend that beyond. So it might look like, oh, they're just playing a game, but you're teaching the civic standards within that game. And then your message where you're highlighting what we're focusing on with learning, what we just did. Oh, we learned some games, and yeah, there was a winner and a loser, but at the end of this, we still came together as a community. We also talk about our social emotional learning, which happens in our classrooms all day, every day. Our classroom community building, you'll see in the next couple of slides that we very much intentionally built in time for teachers for community building. That teachers don't feel pressured day one of school, you have to be teaching content. So if you'll see in this document on the right is an overview of a ELA snapshot of grade 2 here. And you'll see intentionally built in is community building. And as we were doing this work this summer, we wanted to think not just what's happening, well, 4th grade always does this, grade 3 always does this, what we looked at that vertical alignment. So one very intentional shift we made this year was that all elementary grades were going to shift from doing different modes of writing to all doing narrative writing. Because we found that narrative writing is the way, and we do personal narratives. It's the time for kids to share stories about themselves, to bring that community, to be like, oh, I had a similar experience, or like, whoa, like that's totally different than me, and to learn new things about each other, to build that sense of community, to bring that sense of belonging, and that your stories are important. So we very intentionally brought that into the elementary, that everyone started with the personal narrative as the first mode of writing this year. And then on our next slide,
I'm highlighting one of the grade 4 ELA reading units. Again, we really thought about how can we take these standards that the state of Pennsylvania tells us we need to teach grade 4, but how can we map it out in a way that's supporting our civic standards, that's supporting our community building. So at the very beginning of 4th grade, our first unit is literature, very intentionally so, to use a range of texts to teach students life skills that we know big fourth, any of you who have 4th graders know that theme is what we talk about all the time in 4th grade. What's the heart, the message, the lesson of the story? And we very intentionally are choosing stories that teach those life lessons that are going to help build that community and also give opportunities for students to see themselves in text and also expose them to different ideas that they may not have seen in their own personal experiences. So we've found through this integration that the classroom community is what's so amazing about the elementary school. We're together all day, that you get to know the kids, all the nuances of them. And I think, speaking from my own personal experience, especially coming out of the pandemic, this community building has been more essential than ever, because I think we saw what happened when you didn't get to be together, that the kids are just loving sharing. And sometimes morning meeting, you're like, guys, we gotta wrap up the share today. But that share is so integral because it makes them feel more connected, that they'll be more engaged in that tricky math lesson because they know they've got each other's backs and they're a community working together. So really intentionally building the curriculum to bring that community piece together. So I'll pass it back to Drew.
So to summarize here, these documents are humanities documents where students are reading as writers, they're writing as readers, and they're thinking as citizens of community who, because of mirrors and windows, recognize their own value, worth, and purpose. When we read those mirrors and windows, students are also able to write their own mirrors into their writing work. And from there, students are able to hear the experiences, perspectives, stories, and voices of others, think about the world in which we live and also the world in which we should live. So I know I speak for everybody here when I say we are so incredibly passionate about this work and thankful for this time tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you again. This is like, yes, I get paid to work with these people, so I am grateful, and we want to again thank you for providing us this opportunity to share, and we welcome any questions or wonderings you may have. You all did a great job.
Thank you. Your team's passion always shines through in your presentations. Do any of my colleagues have any questions, comments you want to add? Anybody? Should I unleash Dr. Sautner if nobody else wants to go? What? Okay.
I just have a few also. Thank you for this presentation. I'm just curious, how often does that kind of thing happen, like you're discussing over the summer where there was sort of like a curriculum audit? How often does that happen? Who's usually involved?
So we have to, when we talked about building the space for these conversations, we already are thinking of the 20th. We're already mapping out those dates. So it'll be for 3 days in summer, in person. We sit and do the vertical work, horizontal work. And then we have a schedule for during the course of the year that gets shared. We've met how many times? Like 4 or 5? At least once a quarter. Yeah, once a quarter. And then also if we have time during professional learning days, they will meet, like this upcoming professional learning day. They will meet and we have content leads to go and reflect as they add things to the curriculum, get feedback so it's relevant and responsive. And then we continue on the work. And then summers where we take that, if it's a pivot that we need to make, we have those pulse points to do so. And summers where then we do that whole reflective exercise to revisit and move forward.
But we have a 6-year curriculum cycle in the district. So this heavy lift work doesn't happen every single summer, but the curriculum is reviewed on an ongoing basis. So that you heard about the fluidity of curriculum. It can't be a stagnant document. Things change. We need to make sure that we make adjustments based on what data is telling us, what our teachers are seeing in the classroom, what we're seeing from students. So it is a fluid document, but there's a cycle that we use to revise curriculum. So everything's not in the revision stage every single year. This is obviously a major revision that we've been working on. And other content areas also have some revision going on right now, and it's all part of a process that we use as a department.
So just out of curiosity, when I read the strategic plan, I always think of transformative curriculum meaning field trips, like transforming where you're learning. So how does that go into, or how, does that play a role?
I'm going to let Mike speak to something they planned with their curriculum in terms of
Yep.
the transformation, and then you can.
So yeah, we were really looking forward to getting the opportunity for field trips. So for fifth grade, to go with the book that we're reading, Bluebirds. It has to do with the colonial experience. So we're going to have the opportunity. All the fifth graders are going to go to the colonial plantation, and it's going to be falling right. We're going to go in April. We're going over 2 days. Every middle school is going to go 2 days. So 6 days total for three middle schools. And the idea is to try to enhance that idea, trying to get into the characters' perspectives and experiences. So we'll read this. Everyone's going to read the story Bluebirds, get into the mindset of what it was like to be a colonial person at that time, and then we're going to go to this colonial plantation. They're going to meet people, and they have the opportunity to kind of really get into the experience of the characters. So we figured that was probably the best field trip for us to take, since we're all going to have that experience reading this, and it'll be right after we finish the book too. So I think it's going to really enhance the learning for the kids.
Sorry, part of the reason I'm asking is because we live where we do, and there's so many places that are so close by, and in terms of civic engagement, the civic associations are nearby.
Yes.
And I think that there are, I think this is, everything you're working on is awesome, and I would love to see and to hear more, especially considering there have been so many years lost for so many kids that haven't been able to have these field trip experiences. So if I can just whisper that in your ears, please keep that at the top of mind. I think
the
that
more
would
the
be
merrier. We'd love to have more.
And then I have one last question, unrelated to field trips. I'm curious what you're using as an anti-bias filter when you're selecting things.
Sure. So in that, the document there,
The one slide.
it talks about the New York Times.
New York.
New York University, NYU. They have a culturally responsive curriculum scorecard.
And that's what we use.
That's what you're using. And
Yep.
and just out of curiosity, is there anything else that you're using to kind of bring in to make sure that that doesn't have a certain bias to it? Of course, but you can't help but ask, right?
I would say that document is pretty, I'd say it's pretty extensive. There's a lot of like research that's supporting that work and the construction and framework of that document. But I think that's something we can note because that's always important to be
Just,
sure.
yeah, it's always good, because it's such a dynamic thing, bias
Yep.
and,
It's publicly available though, yes?
It is publicly available.
okay.
So we can take a look at that.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you.
I did want to just dovetail off of your comments regarding field trips, because I'm a real big advocate of field trips. So with the first book that you mentioned, Front Desk, I think it would be great to go to the Japanese tea garden and kind of dip your toe a little bit in Japanese culture that's here.
I believe one thing we're currently working and trying to iron out is which grade levels will provide which residencies. So as we're kind of mapping this out post-COVID, it's looking at ensuring that residencies are appropriate for each grade level, and also that we have so many resources within this greater Philadelphia area that we're not duplicating certain trips, and we're really mindful of the planning that goes in. Selfishly, we would love to go on a million field trips, but we also want to make sure that we're providing other grade levels with those same experiences.
As someone who went to the New York Aquarium 5 times in her 4th grade year, I appreciate that consideration. Did you have more that you wanted to hit on?
I'll try to keep it light and, yes, I love the idea of going back to the same place multiple times too, because I think that gives you a process ability, and that's what museums and those sites are supposed to be. They're supposed to be community playgrounds for all ages. So as a museum person, please keep doing that. I want to just start off by saying, you're putting everything, every single time I drive by the high school in Lower Merion Administration, I see enter to learn and leave to serve. And everything that you talked about was setting up that ideal, that how to really help our kids and our public say, it means you have to be a part of this community, that community, and engaged and thoughtful and understand the community isn't just the small group of people that you're around. So just really well done. Now I can't wait till you weave in math, because all I was thinking is like, oh, if you could do the community things in kindergarten and everybody, look how many people like this, look how many people like that, you get some good math charts in there and can nerd out. So really cool ways to put it in and amazing work. and I just wanted to point out, I mean, working in curriculum over the years and writing it and seeing what goes on across this nation, I just want to like shout out to everybody kind of the big epic things that you're doing here that people aren't doing in other districts, but also so many educators are dying to do in other districts and don't have that opportunity, and therefore their kids don't get that rich experience. So the fact, I mean, so that you're talking together, that you're building it with teachers, that you're creating your own curriculum, that you're responsive to the students, that you're laying out that framework for teachers to be able to use. So when a new teacher comes in, they don't feel lost, that they don't live by the standards, but embrace the standards to serve them. And that's what they're supposed to do is fantastic. So all of that work is really powerful and not normal, again, in many communities. So I just want to just mention that out loud and just really think about like the EAD framework that is out there going across the nation around civics and civic engagement, because you're asking those big questions. You're doing the C3 framework. I know this is totally nerding out education, and in a minute I'm going to ask you to kind of unravel some of these pieces, but that you're spiraling up and having teachers across grades talk to each other. It's unbelievably important for PD that the teachers know what's happening, 3 grades up. They've never taught it. I taught kindergarten. You don't teach 6th grade too. That's a rare time you get to bounce around. It's so important to really help that child throughout a lifetime of education and not just a year of education. Really impressive work. But the last thing I'll say, and then I'll go to questions or I'm going to dig it apart, but it's not really deep, I promise. The humility that you're having towards this work, to look at it every single quarter and at the end of the year and saying what's not working and what's not serving our kids. You're putting kids first. You're having humility. And that's really hard when you put so much work into a curriculum. It's hard to see where your failures are. But I can hear the way you're coming at it is with humility, and that's hard. So some of the questions I have around this, and again, feel free to kind of elaborate on any of these terminologies that we talk about when we talk about SAS. I laughed a little because I haven't been on that website in a little while. But explain to our community, like, what is SAS? When we talk about standards, where do the standards come from? And you can do like the short, real quick verbiage of it, but could you also talk about, you just dropped in there like multimodality text sets. Can you share that a little? I love that you just like rolled over it, but could you unpack it a little? And then when we think of communities, it's not just the communities in the classroom. How are you connecting it outside the classroom? And are you working on how our students, and I'm thinking of it as citizens across this country, have a lot of trouble compromising? That is one of the civic skills that, schools fell apart in the last 20 years with. So, sorry, I'm barreling you with questions, but I think you can layer them together and just unpack how that work is going.
Sure, we're going to divvy up the work like we normally do, if that's okay for you.
Yeah, any way
And
you
this way
want.
you get to hear from all of them and not me. I do want to give them a shout out. This team presented at the National Social Studies Conference this curriculum.
And
So,
success, nice.
So I just wanted to let you know that. So I'm going to, Kaisa, if you want to speak to the standards piece in terms of what is SAS, what do we mean by those vertical viewers? And then if you want to just revisit your next question, I think that we can talk about the type of text. So you start from the beginning and then.
Yeah, so I think we talked from the beginning that this all started with this, all starts with the standards. So as educators, we are given the K-12, state of Pennsylvania gives us all of the standards that we need to cover. What I love about, so SAS, I'm dating, I don't even, what SAS is, say thank you. I'm like,
I don't either.
I like say SAS all the time. It's bookmarked on my computer. It's an amazing resource for teachers. I go back to it all the time, and and they've added more and more resources to it. So it allows us to look at the document. You saw that there was the vertical alignment, so that you can look, well, what's happening in 2nd grade? What's happening in 3rd grade? What's happening in 4th grade? So you as teachers and our curriculum cadre, that was a big part of our work this summer, was looking at all the standards, but looking at how they build on each other. I remember we had one big aha moment that the word summarize a text doesn't appear till 4th grade. So our 3rd grade teachers were like, oh, like this is, and then there was these like light bulbs that go off of how everything goes together. So we use that as our grounding, kind of this is where we start, and we look at how everything that you spoke to, how important it is to build on each grade. What's happening in kindergarten that we can build to 1st, that we can build to 2nd, and so on and so forth. And that's just a tool that we all have access to across the whole state. So, and it's a resource that's also grown immensely over the past few years. It has assessment builders, it has access to released items for PSSAs, and it really is like kind of a great place to start this work of like, what are the standard, what do we need to teach the kids? And then we are able to go off of that and then kind of make it to that cater to Lower Merion. So that's that resource.
Great.
That we bring in.
Drew's going to answer some of the other questions that you talked a little bit about, and if not, we can jump to Shayna. But if you want to repeat them really quickly.
I got, I think I have.
Alright.
So the multimodal text sets are the idea that there are, within a unit, there are texts that relate to and extend one another. And those texts, when I think of text, or we think of text as we're making these documents, they're meaning-making resources. So that could be, text could be, and largely in the documents there, chapter books, mentor text, picture books, but it could also be images, it could be podcasts, it could be videos that we're making meaning from, and we're synthesizing understanding, extending understanding, and supplementing understanding from those text sets that work together to inform and build upon one another. And then as far as like the compromise piece, I think that's a huge piece of what literacy offers. And it goes back to that idea of mirrors, windows, and doors. And I think framing that you will see text where you see yourself reflected and you're affirmed, and you'll see texts that offer windows into the experiences of other people. But if we can go back to the idea in creating community that each person has value, worth, and purpose, and we put that at the forefront, I think that's where that transformation can happen and where we can start to see changes in our community. Because even across differences, we're rooted in that shared belief.
And then the last question was a connection to the local community. So it's great that you're building, I mean, it's so important that we have community in our classrooms and a trusted environment, but how are you, and I'm sure you are, not just with field trips, but how you're layering where the kids come from in this community?
One thing that immediately pops up, I think that last year I was part of a team that was able to present to you guys about the project, the problem-based learning opportunities, and immediately what just popped out in my head was fourth grade right now is knee-deep in our ecosystems PBL. And that is all about tying all of the, right now we have been really able to hit so many content areas with this unit. Just some context, the ecosystems, the students are learning about ecosystems, but we've tied it all to the local ecosystem. Our reading in ELA time is all around about what are the different things that can happen, pollution, animal adaptation, learning about food chains and food webs, and it's all tied with the final culminating project is to create a public service announcement about our community and using the knowledge that we've learned in the classroom to communicate to the world of like, and to the Lower Merion community specifically, because part of the project got launched in the fall with a field trip to do a stream study in our local at Mill Creek. So it all started centered with a field trip that launched us into a project about, we looked at images, like Drew's talking about, we looked at images and we saw, while it looks like a beautiful, healthy creek, if you zoom in, oh, there's a piece of trash, there's a water bottle there. How did that get there? The kids asking these wonderings, these aha moments, that then launches, so well, let's read about it. Let's write about it in our opinion writing to talk about how do we take different opinions, and now we're putting it into a project to present to the larger community. So I think that's a big next step of us is that we want to equip these students with the skill sets, like you're saying, to go forth to serve, but also teaching them how can I communicate? If I see a problem in my community, what skills do I have that I've learned in school to address that problem?
And I think we talked about Oakwell and talking to the commissioners about zoning, because that a big chunk of it is, and I'll just say again, I think I said this the last time, is Generation Citizen is a group that I like really hones in on taking those skills and saying, what can you do in your community? And it's across different perspectives too. So really great work. Thank you for kind of unpacking all those pieces. And I'm done, I swear.
I just wanted to just dovetail again on Dr. Sauntner. If you could weave in a little mathematics, that would be awesome.
Already weaving, we hear you.
And also more phys ed. I'm not actually being funny.
I'll jump in. I will start by saying I loved your rubric. It was so pretty. I know that is a particular love of educators, and you're my people. I had a couple of questions. One is how are we looking at our measures of success and I won't say failure, but things that are less successful as we're going along? I know you said it was happening, but how is that happening?
Sure.
So fun that I get
This
to
is
talk
fun
to another
up here.
student.
So in the last column of our unit plan, there's actually the formative assessment piece. So the formative assessments are done in a couple different ways. So we do use Study Island in the lower grade levels. I believe it starts in elementary and it goes through fifth grade, sixth grade, just adopted Study Island as well. That's really skill-based assessments, more concrete piece. We also have end of the quarter summative assessments, but we also look to the measures of just the students and their progress and how they're applying not just the concrete skills, but how are they feeling as a learner? How are they celebrating their own successes in the classroom? For example, at the end of last year, and we'll do it again at the end of this year, we are reading a book called Children of the Longhouse. And as we study these Longhouse people, we actually work in groups and we create artifacts that are really, really trying to mirror some of the different ways in which they're created back by the Native Americans in the 1500s, late 1500s, 1600s. But also it speaks to just every student's individual needs as learners and how they are kind of taking in all the information and how they're choosing to present it out to their peers. For example, we've had students who have made Digualathon sticks, and other students who have engaged with the home economics teachers with sewing, and they've created different dresses and materials together and woven them together. We've had other students who've created published pieces from that. So it's all about providing different opportunities to really showcase learning in a variety of ways.
Great. So changing tacks a little, how often do the books that are selected get changed? Are those on the 6-year cycle, like everything, or is that like guaranteed experience? Is that every year? Like,
Well, our textbook cycle, well, we have textbooks.
not the textbooks, like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
actual
but that,
novels.
like, so
they're
when you
reading.
think about that, right, that's like the 6-year piece. Novels, I think we evaluate and switch out as necessary. They're not necessarily on that cycle. Remember, we talked about the fluidity of our curriculum. That's something that would be fluid because it's a supplemental resource material.
And how much of, like, of what a kid is reading is every fifth grader in Lower Merion versus every fifth grader at Bala Cynwyd Middle School versus every fifth grader in your classroom?
So as of right now, every fifth grader in Lower Merion is reading 2 novels for sure. They're reading The Front Desk in the beginning of the year and currently Bluebirds in the middle of the year. Our hope is probably to expand on that, to even have another one, like everyone having the guaranteed experience throughout the end of the year. But I think since last year was our first year, especially just having fifth grade into the middle school, we're kind of going 1 year at a time to see how that's going to work.
No, I appreciate the balance. I like that you can have the like sort of cohesive experience for every kid, but also that individualistic community experience within. Do we have a situation where like we're all a hallway of fifth grade teachers and we're each teaching a different novel at a different point in time? Or is it like we're in the same building, we're all teaching this book?
So the guaranteed common learning experience is standard across the district, but there's always ways in which teachers can utilize different read alouds, use I&E for a book club, really speak to their own individual students and their interests in their classroom. But the guaranteed and common learning experience is meant to be standard throughout the district. Although in the last quarter, there is teacher choice in which there are 2 books that were selected and each teacher is choosing which of those 2 books they'll be utilizing in their instruction.
Cool.
And there's going to be curriculum provided for both.
That's awesome. Okay, so my last question is a little stickier, and I'm just curious, and if this is included, or if there's guidance for teachers on how as we're going through some of these things, and a lot of focus on American exceptionalism, it sounds like how we're dealing with some of the, I won't say less than exceptional, because what I mean is really horrific treatment of generally people of color in our country. I'm thinking of enslavement, I'm thinking of the treatment of indigenous folks, I'm talking about immigrants, I'm talking about people who are not Christians. How are we handling that at a sort of age-appropriate way to balance some of these topics?
That's actually the beauty of choosing some of the novels that we have selected. For example, Front Desk, the way Kelly Yang, the author, is able to kind of introduce the students to some of those bigger conversations in a very kid-friendly, developmentally appropriate way, it's pretty amazing. So for in front desk, this character goes through things that shock her as she comes to America, and that forces us to kind of talk about it. And the same goes for Bluebirds. It goes where this young character from England kind of learns the truth of what's happening between her people and the indigenous people that they meet. It shocks the students, but it opens up these bigger conversations that the kids like to talk about. They feel sometimes they feel like they're not allowed to, and so social studies allows us that like safe space where we can have these conversations in a developmentally appropriate way. And so the novels pretty much do that for us. It just, well, what happened in this chapter? I think we need to stop and talk about what's going on here. How does it make you feel? And it really has opened up a lot of wonderful, rich conversations with the students as we do that. And they touch on exactly what you were just saying, all different mistreatment of groups all throughout history.
I appreciate that because I won't speak for everyone, but that wasn't particularly my experience as a student, and it wasn't that many mumbled 8 years ago since I was one of those. But I really appreciate that. Did we have any questions from our community? Anybody wants to ask any questions about our presentation? Come on up. When you come up to the front, just remember to say your full name and what neighborhood or town you live in the district.
Hi, my name is Michelle Vessel, and I'm from Gladwin. And I didn't come to ask a question about this, but after listening to you, actually, my son read Front Desk. It was at Black Rock. I think she came for an author visit, and that was like really great. So, yeah, so it's great that now you're expanding it to all of that. I guess my question is, they answered some of them. I guess you only have 2 books. Is that it? Like, I was asking how many books, I guess,
books
you're going to
for
have in the
what?
curriculum. So I guess you said you'll have just the 2, Bluebird and
Oh, the guaranteed experience.
Front Desk.
Yeah, I don't want to be a misconception that we only have 2 books. Those are the 2,
The 2 novels, I
they're
mean.
the 2 guaranteed common learning experiences that we purchase for every 5th grader across the district. And then there's other extensions and supplemental readings that are available as well.
About those books, like those subjects.
Correct. Like there is a slide where we talk about here's the intersectionality of this theme and where it could branch off into other, to poetry or to a speech. So they have those opportunities as well in classroom libraries. We are looking to extend to give more, like even in 3rd grade, we're giving a choice of 2 novels and then talking about controlled choice as it's relevant to that learning. So we're starting to build from these experiences.
So in that case, I guess my question is, how do you choose the novels then? Like if it's going to be those 2 books that you have right now in the curriculum, and I'm assuming it's going to stay that way because it's working, how, like, will you introduce any other ethnic backgrounds?
We do. I'll let you know. I'll let them speak to how they chose these 2 books, like Front Desk and then the books that you did choose.
So I think one of the beautiful things about Front Desk in particular is because as we start our year talking about immigration and citizenship, her book really touches upon the fact that Mia is an immigrant and her experience, but it also allows us to go into our students' experiences and they have a chance to share out about their cultures, their heritage, which is so unique and diverse. And so it gives them a lens of being able to speak about themselves. But from there, we also have a wide variety of texts that we include as well as ancillary resources. That's just our starting point of our core resource. Along with Bluebirds, it's the same thing. That's our core resource, but then we have our ancillary resources from there. And then in the 3rd and 4th quarter as well.
Okay. So just along, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, the board member who spoke about the races. I know. My name's Sheena. So for me, I would be concerned about what's going on in the world right now with anti-Semitism. So I guess, and there's a lot of Jewish immigrants. So I was wondering if that could be incorporated anyway, so that people can know that they come from all different backgrounds and all different countries.
I think that's such an important piece of our talking point is the sensitivity that we have and that balance in 5th grade and in every grade level, knowing our students, knowing what's appropriate as far as exposure, dialogue, and I think this district, we're so fortunate, we do a masterful job from the top down of making sure that the conversations are led in a way that promotes discussion and tolerance, accepting diversity. It starts with community in the elementary level. But it's a very fine balance in exposure, in delving into appropriate text that touch upon the topics in a way that makes all students feel like they're seen and heard, especially with what's going on in the world right now and the atrocities going on in the world, and not diminishing those experiences, but providing the appropriate lens in which to see them.
Thank you.
Can I piggyback off of that one? So great question too. So it made me think, you have 2 books, you have a whole school year, it's actually not a lot of time. Like, you never realize it, and then it's like, it's not a lot of time at all. So how are you weaving current events age appropriately? You're like all ready to jump onto this conversation. I see the premise of you're setting the kids up to have important conversations, to be respectful of different opinions. But how do you bring that in? And it can just be self from the kids, but what is your intention there?
Yeah, so by using, for example, we use Front Desk. So if we use Front Desk and Mia's experience, which actually resembles the author Kelly Yang's experience, we're able to pull the lens back and say, well, are there other people? Are there other groups who may have had a similar experience? And then that allows us to have those bigger questions and discussions. We can use things like Scholastic News to talk about current events. We use Common Lit as a resource where we can find things that connect to a broader idea, where this isn't just Mia's experience and maybe immigrants from China's experience. This is something that's been happening across different cultures for longer periods of time. And that's actually how we end up going towards history. We start, well, Mia, her experiences happened in the 1990s. Well, how about 100 years before that? What cultural groups were immigrating here at that time? Were they having similar experiences? So we start looking at different novels, or not novels, like picture books and things like that. Then we go back even further. This story of immigration, when did it start? How did it go at that point? So that's where we ended up in Bluebirds, which takes place in 1587. So we have these opportunities to look at these small moments and kind of pull the lens back and say, who else might have a similar experience? Does that make sense?
We do have current, I'm just going to add
Oh,
on, just for
sorry.
clarity.
Yeah.
So we have Newsella, which is current and is responsive to the community. We have, I will say, a plethora of resources. They showcased and highlighted how they're bringing these experiences and what every student experiences across the districts. We also supplement with the Newsella for current events and Scholastic News to have those experiences as well, to talk about what's happening in the world today, right now, and how does that relate? What have we learned from this? What do we know based on the learning experiences we've talked about and read about? So I was just lending clarity that we do have other supplemental resources that provide current world events in other subject areas as well.
I'm sorry. In reference to the periodicals that you're using, who are the parent companies?
In terms of the authors, we're not using periodicals. You
you
mean
said
the novels?
something, Newsella.
Newsella is a resource online. It's a digital resource. It's like News ELA. So that is the company that puts it forth.
So a bigger company
It's not
does
biased.
not. It's not what?
It is the most unbiased resource we have that we use for if something is presented that we could go to. So we'll look through and we'll talk about it, and then we'll say, I'd like to use this in the classroom for what's going on currently.
We had a presentation about Newsella last
We
year,
did,
didn't
we
we?
did.
Yeah, I believe we did.
Yeah, it's an ancillary supplemental resource. It's not the core resource, so that's why we can look at it and say, hey, we found this is happening and talk about it. Because we have content leads that we also meet with, so they're my touch point for when we talk about those things. But in terms of a bigger.
We could talk about curriculum all day long in curriculum meetings.
So which is why I was like, this is great. We really appreciate it. Are there-
Just one last comment. This is more for like you guys, and I know you know this, but I'm preaching to the choir here. And I think that so much as what you all talked about layering the text and exposure, it's all about inclusion. It's all about belonging. It's making sure all the kids can be together in a community and learn together at different levels, at different aspects, and with different perspectives they come to the table. I just do think as we move forward to add people, we need representation of a diverse group of people in our teaching course as well. This is not on you. I want to add more people to you. But I really think that needs to be said too, because when I look at this table, I'm not seeing that. And that's a key factor in inclusion and belonging. And I know you know this, so you don't.
Yeah,
this
I
isn't
want you
on
to know this is representative of the curriculum cadre. We have a teacher from every grade level, from every building that meets, and they're diverse groups. So I just wanted to make you aware.
Thank you.
I did want to make one more comment in reference to, and I think it's lovely that you're doing this whole piece on immigration, but I think it's also vitally important that people understand that a large group of Americans, which I'm a part of, the people who are enslaved, okay, were not immigrants. I remember my child being very confused once in a class talking about immigration. He's not an immigrant. He wasn't brought here as he didn't come here as an immigrant. And I think that's vitally important. And the fact that that group is still struggling for full citizenship in this country.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. This was a fantastic presentation and a fantastic discussion, so I want to thank my colleagues as well. And while everybody packs up for the evening, we'll have our next presentation on positive behavior support and interventions from Mr. Bernadowitz of Penn and Mr. Ross from Kinwood Elementaries, respectively.
We had some students that wanted to make comments. They were on the Zoom meeting, so they didn't realize that they had to sign the sheet. Is it okay if you have?
Oh, yeah, so if
Is that
students
okay?
sign up, what we do is the students will go first at the end of this presentation unless we want, what we'll do is we have a second.
Presentation, or is it a reference? I don't have a copy of your agenda, and I just was asked to drive my kiddo here so they could make statements.
Okay, so the presentation, we have one more presentation and then we do public comment. Students are given then first right to speak at those, at that point.
Okay, so they can
So they can sign up now. If you wanted to take the sign-up sheet over
Okay.
to the side, that would be great so that we're not speaking
Okay,
during the
thank you.
presentation. But absolutely, thank you so much. Okay,
Thank you.
so.
This is a new process for us. and I was
It's
trying to
absolutely
find
fine.
the
We
agenda.
love it when students come. So if Mr. Ross and Mr. Bernadowitz want to come up and get started, and the sooner we're going, the sooner we're done.
And Dr. Gaudioso, she should have
And
been on
Dr.
here.
Gaudioso, she's
Yes.
not on my
No.
list. I apologize.
No, it's not your
But she's
fault.
in front of me.
No, it's not your fault. So tonight, we also have Dr. Gaudioso, Mr. Ross, and Mr. Bernadowitz are going to talk about positive behavior supports and intervention, PBIS. It'll actually really nicely tie to some of the conversations we had earlier today.
Okay, so one of the things that's really exciting is how closely it ties together when we think about community and when we think about really being child-centered, in particular in the ways that the adults are designing to really enhance student experience. So it's a really nice segue. And as I was listening to Kaisa talk about the PBLs, I was recalling 4 years ago, fall of 2020 was when we first started that reimagination. And when I think about where they are now, 4 years later, it's amazing. So look, thinking about where this work that they just shared is going to be 4 years from now, it's very exciting. So we're very excited to share with you what's been going on with PBIS. PBIS stands for Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. And I just want to introduce real quickly, Sean Bernadowitz is our principal from Penn Elementary. Ty Ross is our principal at Kinwood Elementary. I'm Jen Gaudioso, Director of Elementary Education, and I get to support district PBIS efforts in this district, but these guys are where the action is. So I'm going to give a brief introduction, and then they're going to share with you what it looks like in action. So first of all, just a little terminology, MTSS, it stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support, and the idea of MTSS is really, it's more about systems. So it is about organizing your decision-making systems, your implementation, and really making sure that you have systems for progress monitoring, and all of it in support of student learning. It also helps us increase our effectiveness, our efficiency. It helps us make sure that we have consistent adult behavior in response to academics, learning, and all of that also encompasses behavioral and social emotional learning as well. PBIS stands for Positive Behavior Intervention Support and is a behavioral social emotional arm of MTSS. So it falls under that same umbrella, but whereas part of MTSS focuses on academics, PBIS focuses on behavior. It's very tied to positive school climate and culture. Next slide. Oops, one back. There we go. That's all right. So a couple of really, really important things to remember about both MTSS and PBIS. They are frameworks. So it's not a program, it's not a place, it's not a resource. It is a way of understanding and organizing the systems that support kids. Implementation includes a continuum of supports that increase as needed. So that idea that we can start in one place and really be responsive and individualize and change those supports as needed for students is part of the framework. PBIS supports academic, social, emotional, behavioral learning success or learning outcomes for students. The emphasis is on learning. So when we think about behavior, a lot of times, especially if you went to school ages and ages ago, like I did, a lot of the times you would think about behavior, and it was more about accountability and expectations and possibly consequences for kids. This is about teaching. This is about teaching and learning and help students develop their own understandings, their own sense of where they are in a community, and you just heard a great presentation on that, and the idea of helping them to really develop, own their part in a community, own their part in making it a positive school culture, and really having the whole system support their own individual growth. And PBIS is for all students. Next slide, please. So this triangle is something you may see a lot of times with relation to MTSS. It originated as part of a preventive health model for increasing supports in layers or what's sometimes called tiers. So we focus, if you look at the green, that idea there is, that would be for all students, the yellow would be for some, and then the few would be the tip of the triangle there. What we focus on, however, is prevention. So when we think about the idea of preventive Tier 1 experiences for all students, that represents our core universal guaranteed program or experience for all students so that we are building a positive community, shared learning, resource development, all of the things that would support individual student learning in the classroom. We have no such thing as a Tier 1, 2, or 3 student. What we have to do is think about the tiers as the degrees of support the adults are providing. So when we think about the tiers, they are what the adults are doing in terms of providing additional preventive supports to help students learn. Next slide. We have 3 schools participating in PBIS training as part of our goals. They include Penwyn Elementary, Kinwood Elementary, Bala-Kinwood Middle School, and we selected just 2 of our schools to share tonight. We're sharing an elementary picture, but as they're describing the experience of learning and going through the Pennsylvania Network PBIS training, what they're building and learning would be the same thing Bala-Kinwood Middle School is working on as well. So our principals will share a little bit more about what that looks like in action. Additional goals for this year include district-wide restorative practice training for all K-12 professional staff. We want to build the existing expertise. All of our administrators had restorative practice training. They infused those practices into their own leadership and interactions with students. And because of the critical importance of restorative practice as a preventive Tier 1 experience for all students, we want to really build teacher and staff expertise. So this includes shared understanding, shared learning, the resource development, and some of that you'll see tonight. What you see on the left, if you can go back, that's okay. It's a one-pager we've shared with staff that gives a glimpse of how restorative practice fits in as a core Tier 1 experience for all students. So all students participate regularly in those conversations, restorative circles, community building, relationship building. And if you think back to that triangle, that should be 80% of our students responding to that degree of support and universal experience. And then it would be smaller percentages of students who may need just a little bit more, so they would still get that core experience and something more. And that more can look like what you see in Tier 2. And that's core plus a little more, where we differentiate and we really meet students where they are and determine how we can better support them as learners. And you can see other Tier 1 social, emotional, and behavioral learning resources there, including responsive classroom, in addition to the restorative practices, second step curriculum, habits of mind. There are more there than fit in this one slide, but for example, like advisory at the high schools, so lessons that are supporting students with social, emotional learning. Next slide, please. So I'm going to shift here to Sean, who's going to start to talk about what it looks like in action.
Hi, good evening. So just as Dory assembled a team to do the work that she had, we at each of our buildings have assembled teams as well. These teams currently began their training in the summer with MCIU coming out, providing us with some professional development. Each of our teams consist of stakeholders from across the school. So the teams consist of grade level representatives and different stakeholders such as a special education representative, instructional assistants, because our support staff are so integral in helping us to deliver and reinforce our kids, because they are there on the front lines with our kids as much as our teachers are as well. So we make sure that they are involved as well. All staff members were engaged in the process of doing a self-evaluation. So we began with the MCIU training. We have different modules that we'll be attending. Kinwood and Ballykinwood have been able to coordinate some of their attendance at those module trainings, so they're collaborating with between their levels with some of the work that they're doing as well. In this year, part of our initial work is to do a self-evaluation, and this self-evaluation helps us to identify our areas of relative strength, things that we're doing well, and areas where we have additional needs or places that we can continue to grow. And that was a whole staff evaluation that was done, again, by everyone. All the classroom teachers, instructional assistants, all their voices were important to be heard, so that we had a clear picture of where we stood relative to where we wanted to be. Next slide, please. One of the first modules that we attended had us identify the behavioral matrix that we wanted to create for each of our schools. In these matrices, we take time to identify the specific positive behaviors that we want to promote and reinforce with our students. Teams took time to take these matrices, work through them, and identify them and make them into a manner that it was accessible to students, that are easy for them to remember. Since we are dealing with elementary students, we keep things very short and sweet and to the point, things that kids can repeat. If you come into any of our schools and you kind of ask the kids what are the rules of their school, they'll be able to hopefully recite those for you and give you examples of what it looks like. So the matrix is something that it's observable, it's measurable, it's positively stated. Rather than telling kids what not to do, we tell them what it is we want them to do. It's something that people can reinforce throughout the entire day. And again, it's not just classroom teachers, it's every member of the staff has an opportunity and a role in this process. Next slide, please. At Penwood Elementary, our three school rules consist of being safe, kind, and respectful. And as you may probe around the PBIS world, the three rules that you usually find come out to be very similar. There's very nuanced terms that are maybe a little bit different from one level to another or from school to school. But as you kind of probe around, you'll see that these are essentially what we are looking for students to do. So that's our three school rules. On the left-hand side there is the matrix that we created. So thinking about all the different, some of the places, I should say, that students may be, what does it look like? Because we can say be safe, but if we're not specific and concrete and talk to kids exactly about what we're looking for, then we're really not doing that direct teaching that is expected and needed as part of this process. So this was the matrix that we developed for our school. This is something that we continuously look back over because there's always new things that we may have overlooked that we need to go back and add to and include. This time I'll turn it over to Ty to talk about PBIS in action at Kinwood.
Thanks, Sean. So I'm actually going to apologize. I'm going to be a little bit repetitive of what Sean has said. We are in year one of implementing PYS. Sean's in year two, so some of the terminology and words are you're going to hear the same thing twice. So at Kidwood, we're in year one. So one of the things we had to do, we had to roll out PBIS to our students. So one of the things we did, we had a PBIS assembly. We talked up Kenwood Cash. We talked up PBIS. We talked up our expectations, which you'll see later. But one of the biggest things we had to do, we had to do a social story to explain to kids as you're getting Kenwood Cash for meeting our expectations. Sometimes you might get Kenwood Cash, sometimes you might not get Kenwood Cash, but it's still important that we're always following our expectations. I'll still have students that'll quote this today. A student may get a piece of Kenwood Cash, another student might not, and they say, "That's okay, I'll probably get some next time." So they're on board. So like I said, PBIs, it can look different at each school. We started the year with lessons. I know Sean has, our teachers led lessons in the morning. Sean has videos at his school. We all have a bus safety video. I know, Sean, you have a playground video. That's something that we'll be looking to do for next year, is to create videos, to have a library video. I've already reached out to Dr. Johnson. He's willing to set me up with some of his audio visual students who can come down and make the videos for us. Some more PBIS action at Kenwood. So every day our students, we gather in the gym before we head to class, and either myself, my assistant principal, or any other staff member, before we release our students up to class, I'm on the microphone, they're on the microphone. I'm looking for the grade level who's being safe, be respectful, being responsible, and be kind. Because they're sitting down, it means their eyes are on me, they're quiet, or their hands and feet are together, and based on how they're doing is how they get released to class. So they have like a little mini competition going within themselves. Kindergarten seems to always win. And also with that, our student,
You're talking to a lot of kindergarten parents here, so that makes us very happy.
they're always excited and smile, so it gets everyone off to a good positive start. Then after we get upstairs, we do our announcements over the loudspeaker. I'll start it off, but the kids have really taken a liking to coming down and doing the expectations. They'll run to my office, "Hey, can we do the expectations today? Can we say be safe, be respectful, be kind, be responsible?" So it's often to see, so the announcements are basically all student-led, which is great. Like I said before, when students are following our expectations, they receive Kenwood Cash. Kenwood Cash, they can use their Kenwood Cash. Our mascot's an owl. Once a month, we have Albert's Emporium. So we open up our school store down in the atrium. We have tangible items, but we also have some silly things, like you see me up there with a mohawk. That was one of the things the students could buy at the school store. Get Mr. Ross a mohawk and pick the color of his hair. So a bunch of students pulled their cash together, which I thought was awesome.
My
to
kid
purchase
ring-led this, I must admit. She loved it.
I think it was something selfless. It was something that the whole school could enjoy. They didn't want something for themselves. They wanted something for everybody, so it was great. You can also purchase Principal for a day. We have some little tangible items. Pokemon cards are popular, baseball cards, and some other little trinkets. And the students are really enjoying that. So they're really trying hard to earn Kenwood Cash. Some are even trying to save it for next year. Like, is it going to be the same for next year? I'm like, sure, of course. I don't know what they're going to do with all that cash, but they're saving it.
So again, just extending some of the PBIS in action at Penn Win. What you see there in front of you is a visual representation that's in our main atrium. On the left-hand side, there are some reminders for the kids, and at the bottom is our currency. So we have Penguin points. Students earn Penguin points for being safe, kind, or respectful. An enhancement that we did this year is that we added teacher names to their tickets. So each teacher has their own set of tickets, and the child gets to put their name on it, and we know who the teacher is that awarded that point. Teacher will tell the student what it is specifically that they saw or observed so that they understand, why am I getting this Penguin point? We will pull names out of that bin every Thursday morning. We'll recognize a few kids randomly and also recognize the staff member who was awarded the point, so that there's that recognition, that positive reinforcement, not just for the kids, but for the staff, for their buy-in and engagement in the process as well. What you see on the right-hand side there is our school-wide goal for the year. So this year, our goal has been set at 80,000 Penguin points. When we hit milestone markers, numbers of 10,000, 20,000, we pause and we have a school-wide reward. So all the classes are contributing to this. It's a school-wide system where they similar to the ties students pooling their points, their cash, to get that Mohawk. Our kids are contributing to it. So it's a school, again, a school-wide goal that they're getting. The first one they got was roughly in October. That was an instant extra recess. So we had them all together. We were having an assembly. We announced that we hit 10,000 points, and we said, we're going outside. And we took 600 kids and went outside and had recess. So the kids love that. When we hit 20,000, which was roughly in December, we had a school-wide bingo that Dr. Yanni was able to stop by and visit. Dave Clark, one of my special education teachers, if he ever decides to get out of teaching, could be a professional bingo caller. Really just fires the kids up, does a great job. So last year, the school did reach its goal, its school-wide goal, and at the end of the year, that resulted in me taking a nice slime shower. The kids made slime with their teachers, and then again, using the points system, we pulled names out, random kids. There were a couple staff members who were retiring, so they were the first people who were up with buckets of slime to dump on me. The kids loved it. Next slide, thank you. We also have what's called the Principal's 200 Club, and yes, that drawing is supposed to be me up there. So again, this is up in the in one of our bulletin boards, atrium displays in the main atrium. This is given. We give these tickets to 4 or 5 staff members every week. They get 3 or 4 tickets, and they are yellow tickets. They're different from the Penguin points. They are still used to reinforce. It's for kids that kind of go above and beyond. So it's a little extra recognition. If you go to the next slide, please. When they get a ticket, they get to go to a teacher who is very tech savvy. She takes their picture, she puts their picture on a square, and then there's a number associated with the square. So we have gone through, this year they're spelling out Penguin. So when we get the letter P, when they form the letter P, all those kids got pulled. They got to come out. We had a special reward for them. We have some oversized tricycles. So we threw T-shirts on them that the home and school donated. We put them on tricycles. I had a bullhorn and an alarm. We were walking around in the building on tricycles. Everybody was coming out to see what was going on. And then we went outside and rode trikes on the blacktop. Our most recent winners were spelled out the letter E and N. So last Friday, when the weather cooperated, we were able to pull those kids. It was a surprise announcement for the kids. Teachers knew about it in advance, but Friday afternoon, we took 22 kids outside, played kickball, gave them a T-shirt again. So again, this is just another layer of reinforcement for our kids, and our home and school has been wonderful in supporting those efforts. This is our currency. So as we had talked about already, we have the Penguin points. They're on the left-hand side there. You see the kid gets to put their name on it. We added the teacher name so we knew who awarded it. The right side there, Ty can talk about his Kinwood cash.
So we have our Kinwood cash. Every student in the school has a pouch that they can keep their cash in. They can keep it in their desk. And you see some of the highlights, some of our posters that we have. We have our posters for be safe, be respectful, be responsible, be kind, all throughout the building in various areas. We don't have posters on the bus. We have posters for the bus. We have posters for recess, the cafeteria. So everywhere the kids are, there's always a reminder of what the expectations look like. Next slide. And speaking of the expectations, our kids help us set them. So at the beginning of the year, the teachers led lessons on school-wide expectations during learning meetings, and the lessons were followed by grade-wide PBIS assemblies led by administration with our students, so we could ask the kindergarten students, hey, what does being safe look like? What does being responsible look like? What does being kind look like? In each grade level, the kids were able to define what it looks like on their own, which I thought was absolutely awesome. That's much better than me giving them definitions. They were able to set it themselves, so you got buy-in from the students. We also have the Outstanding OWL program. That's something that's been going on in Kinwood for years. We combine that to PBIS. So now, as part of Outstanding OWL, we're looking for the students who are meeting our expectations. And once you become an Outstanding OWL, you're shouted out. You get a shout out on our weekly Kinwood Connection, the video that everyone sees on Monday. And you also get your name on a certificate on the wall. The kids, something else the kids have really bought into. They love seeing their name on the wall. We also have pep rallies to go over and reinforce our expectations. We had one this year. We had teachers and students playing minute to win it games as far as our PBIS. Let's have some fun together. So that was awesome. We also had one in January when we came back from the break, just to kind of remind the students, hey, these are I know we haven't been together for a while. These are our expectations. Let's make sure that we're continuing to follow them as we get to the second half of the school year. So here's a flow chart that was created with help from the MTIU and district administration and central office and principals this summer. This is kind of the framework that we have used to create our own flow charts that look different in each school. There's a couple of things I wanted to point out here. First is the neutralizing routines to assist with equitable practices. We know we're talking about PBIS. We know we're positive, but in those rare cases where students don't meet expectations, sometimes a conversation needs to be had or something needs to be done. So we always want to make sure that the teachers and adults and staff have the neutralizing routines to make sure before you address the students for minor behaviors, take a minute, take a breath, make sure you are in the right place to have a conversation with the students. We know days can be hectic, they can be busy, some days you're putting out one fire, another fire. Make sure that you are centered and you are grounded before you have the conversation with that student. I'd also like to highlight the 5 restorative questions up there. Being a restorative practice trainer, I'm kind of biased, and I'm very excited that we're training all the elementary schools on this Friday. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome that we can tie restorative practices and PBIS. It's all tier 1 supports that every kid is getting in the MTSS model. I love the questions because it keeps you consistent and fair when you're dealing with students. If I'm handling everything the same way, there is no bias. Like, I'm fair and I'm consistent when handling minor issues or major issues. Next slide, please. So here's our Kinwood flow chart. It's based off the flow chart you just saw on the previous slide, still aligned to all our district goals and priorities. Just wanted to give everyone an example of it. This is a PBIS, that's a flyer that was sent home to parents to kind of explain what PBIS is. And speaking of parents, I just want to say we have a large PBIS team. We sent, when we originally sent out who would like to be on a PBIS team in September, we had 18 staff members say, hey, we want to be a part of it, which is awesome. That's too big to send to the IU, so we have a smaller committee who goes to the IU and reports back. But we also have a parent as part of our team as well. Next slide.
So while we have a few schools participating in the PBIS training that's formalized, offered through the MCIU, and they are doing turnaround sharing so that we can benefit all schools and all leadership teams, it really is important to understand that there's already a lot in place to support social emotional learning. And you saw some of that in that previous flyer. Some key elements of restorative practice that you just heard Ty describing, this is part of that 80%. When we talk about the 80%, the community building, the prevention, it is grounded in that restorative practice. It's also grounded in early years in responsive classroom. You can see here the majority of the focus is preventive and skill building. The same is true for responsive classroom. Both are teaching frameworks for making sure expectations are taught, not just as abstract statements or requirements or expectations, but with modeling, with clarity, with guided practice, and with the same reinforcement you would give to anything else you're trying to teach. And that's where all of those reinforcing practices and the matrix with the reward systems come into it. Both include elements of engagement, interpersonal, community building, and some of the specific resources that are used with restorative practice, responsive classroom in early years include things like the power of our words for educators as they're working with students, and the idea there that when we create clarity and expectations and we're using affirmative language to do that, our words have that power to help students really understand, own it, and that the alignment between the two really creates some rich coherence in the experience for students. Next slide. So PBIS falls under the umbrella of MTSS. Both share common approaches such as implicit teaching, differentiation or individualization, modeling, evidence-based practices, the tiered supports, progress monitoring, and using data to make decisions and solve problems. And one of the protocols we use in the district for working with data is called TIPS. It stands for Team Initiated Problem Solving, and it is a What Works Clearinghouse approved Tier 1 intervention. And using data to consider trends in behavior, and I loved your question earlier. Again, this is about how, as a system, we can adjust the interaction between the environment, the interaction between the curriculum, the instructional approach, and the student so that we can be more successful in supporting that student. So it really is more about what can the adults do with this information, and that idea of taking a look at trends in behavior so that a team can then problem solve around that and say what's happening there. We're seeing a trend in recess or in a lunchroom. They can consider what lessons may be needed, what modeling may be needed, maybe a video, class-wide teaching that can help prevent the issue going forward and also help students take ownership for what they can do with positive community building. And again, when small interventions are needed, like what was shared in that flow chart, that's more on an individualized basis as well. Next slide. So here's some of the student and staff reflections collected from Penn Win. Collecting input and feedback is part of the learning. This example included student voice, which is so valuable since this framework supports community building within our schools, and we want students to take pride in and take ownership for creating that positive school community. So including their voice is an important part of self-assessment. Additionally, each of the teams, this reflects some teacher voices from Penn Win, but each of the teams going through the formal training this year, part of the work involves a significant self-assessment about the practices in the schools. Layered on that, we have our own in-district MTSS advisory team. We're using a data protocol to look at our systems. When we look at, if this is what an effective MTSS system is, it includes PBIS, where are we on each of these elements? So it's very multifaceted work, and there's a lot that's already in place and happening, and we just wanted to highlight the excitement this year that we have around both what our PBIS schools are doing and the learning that they're bringing back for us. So finally, as we complete this restorative practices training for the professional staff this year, we'll begin planning to train all support staff next in 2024-25. As you heard Sean sharing, they really are critical participants in PBIS because they really are important to our students and our positive culture, so we want to support their learning as well. So that's one of our next steps. When we look at implementation next year, one of the things that will be joining our toolbox is the data locker that Dr. Yanni was talking about in terms of data collection tools. And again, that's really helping us look as a system on our own actions that we can take to support students first. The expansion of PBIS training and implementation and infrastructure building. That's taking all that we're learning and continuing to grow and refine using self-assessment tools as well as our own observations and evaluation of where we are and how things are going. And finally, the restorative practice training will be, we've met as our MTSS advisory team and principal teams to talk about, now that we've done this, what next? What does good implementation look like? What should we be seeing in classrooms? How do we support teachers with the next layers of learning? And really help us grow from there. So questions?
Hi, that was really fun. I appreciate so much the school-wide positive behavioral activities, because there's so much about motivation is not about just direct rewards, it's about that. So I'm so glad you shared them, and they sound so fun and so rewarding. I get the couple questions for you. One, Jen, for you, Dr. Gaudioso, MTSS, just for frame of reference, when did that start in the district? Like how long, you talked about project-based learning before and reflecting back, and it's almost like, where was our stake in the ground that you really dug into it in this district?
So we're probably in fully a year 3 for K4 or K-6, high school, K-8, I'm sorry. But high school is a year after that.
Got it. So it's relatively new for us.
Very much so when you consider the number of systems. There's a pretty elaborate tool. When we did our MTSS presentation, one of the things we were thinking of is sharing the tool. It's multi-page, line by line, looking at every possible system you have in an organization that supports students, and really just asking you to evaluate what practices you have in place, how aligned are they, and really looking at you to really find your next first step to making those systems stronger. So it's pretty intense to go through that process, but it's really been, the conversations have been amazing. And while we have certain goals that we set as an entire district, each building went through in that very first year its own self-evaluation as a building using that tool. So people had different baselines for starting that work. So, as we're sharing, you heard, Ty sharing, Sean and Penn Win are a year ahead in the PBIS, because as you go through your own self-evaluation, part of the building leader's role is to identify your building priorities. MTSS, while it may be a district initiative, it needs to be led by the building principal, because the building culture is unique. You need to create that building team, and the plan for the building is jointly developed using your internal building data. And our role is really working with every building on what's our next first step all together to move the whole district forward, but what's your next first step as a building?
That was really helpful, thank you. I also think it points out the fact that it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not the same exact thing in every spot, and that's what creates the equity across the school district. It's the big goal and the big project. But I think my only complaint about MTSS, it has all these acronyms. I sometimes get lost in the
Understood.
layering, and I know the content, and I still get lost. So smaller questions, so thank you for that framing. That was really, really helpful. Do you ever... And it actually wraps back to the first thing we agreed upon in the, I'm gonna call it Like It, and that's not the name of that program.
Link it.
Like it, why the data matters so much for these systems and how they interplay with each other. Do you ever look at the kids that don't get my kids used to call them Mormon fuzzies when they got these things in Belmont Hills. Like if they did something good and like stood out, the teacher would give them a little fuzz ball, which was a Mormon fuzzy, and then you cashed them in. It's really cute. Do you ever look at the kids that don't get them? Like, can you tell that? Because I'm just thinking, like, how heartbreaking is that? But what about those kids?
So I would say that the elementary teachers are very much in tune with each of their kids. So I think we'd be hard pressed to come across a kid who has at some point earned some Penguin points. There was a little bit of that with the Principals 200 because there's less of those to go around. So there is, a little bit of that friction that we do. But again, I think elementary teachers, they know their kids. There are times where teacher may pull me aside and say like, hey, Johnny could really use like a couple extra points today, and I make it a point to find him or her and doing what's expected, not just giving it out, but like, hey, caught you being good today. So the teachers do a lot of communication and again, keeping eyes on their kids. So.
Got it.
And if I could, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Because I would definitely agree with Sean, but we also will give it out to a whole class at a time. I might see a class who's walking in the hallway and looking and sounding great. That entire class is getting Kenwood cash on the spot. But I'd say every student in our school always is able to buy something at Albert's Emporium. They always have Kenwood cash.
Got it.
The thing I would add too is using that TIPS protocol, the team-initiated problem solving, you're looking at students who aren't perhaps as successful and trying to create individualized incentives and motivations. So if there were a student who's missed in one of those layers because people are just, so excited to support kids, you hope that they're getting caught in those first layers of motivation. But that second tier, the tiers of support really are part of how do we design our response to better motivate students and support their learning. So those individualized incentive plans would be a part of that, especially achievement team, when you're looking at students who might have more need for behavioral interventions. It can be very targeted, even to the point that there's timings attached. So it can be pretty significant depending on student need, and that's why the tiers are there. Yeah.
And that's great because so much of the reward is based off of what's your level of being safe. Like, and it's not to weaken what kids do, but sometimes it's really hard for kids to do some of those pieces that are easy for other kids. And they are trying sometimes even harder. And all the research shows us that, you know, having an adult that is an authority in that realm saying you're doing this and you're moving forward is the unbelievable incentive. So that was my next question. Thank you. It's tiered per kid, so you know what it is. I literally was that kid that when I stayed quiet for 30 seconds in class, my teacher was like, I'm so proud of you, because it was really hard for me. And I learned to be quiet as an adult, and just save my questions till the end.
If I could
No,
just-
I think that's it. I think I'm
If I could
good.
add on
was
to
it.
that, so that differential reinforcement system that you're talking about, that's where, you know, our support staff are key, because
Yeah.
they are there, they are present, they know, they would have known you, you know, as that kid who, you know, I gotta have my,
probably still
I
don't.
gotta have my points ready, because if she's quiet for this long, we gotta get her, you know. So that again is part of why that support staff are so important to this process.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I'm done.
I love this. I have a Kinwood owl, and I hear all about, I have two Kinwood owls, but I have a kindergartner. I hear about this. This is the best. I think it's great. And I think it really does a lot to build belonging, because people feel like they matter. They feel like you're investing in them. The kids feel like they're being invested in, and I think that's really important. So this is wonderful. The question I have is, Dr. Johnson's name was brought up. Is this happening in high school? Is this happening, or is it only happening in the 3 schools that were on the slide?
Right now, the formal PBIS, like the training, is happening with the 3 schools that we shared, Ballackinwood, and then Kinwood and Penwyn. What I shared in those slides about here are things that are happening across the district, that would be in all the schools. Dr. Johnson is our go-to for restorative practices. So I know even, you know, there's some other evidence-based strategies like check-in, check-out, working with achievement team. Like, he's highly invested in that. And I know I've met with both high school principals related to MTSS work and prioritizing, using that same tool, what's our next first step? So it's because it's complex already, and then when you're looking at a system like the high school, which has its own complexities just at that age, you know, there's a lot more to consider and a lot more, I would say there are a lot more pockets of the work happening, because it's just, the need is broader, more students, the age, and there's just a lot more to figure out, because you want kids to have more independence at that age. So I would say we have the bones of a lot of really positive PBIS strategies in all of our buildings, and we're just working on getting better and more aligned.
I think that's great. I think building on it through every grade band, I could only serve, because I think, as one of the educators was saying before in the previous presentation, they're a product of Lower Merion, and they're proud of that. These are things I think people can feel proud of, and I don't mean to say that high school is going to be proud of a Kinwood Cash, you know, piece of paper the same way, but I think there's an element of, you know, it feels like an investment in the education process. So that sounds great, and I think it should be built on.
Yeah, we're definitely in learning years, and secondary is only in their second year to MTSS overall, so they're working their way through that sort of self-evaluation process where our priority areas. So it's exciting, because they're great. It's very student-centered work, which is really inspiring.
That's great. Thank you.
Follow up on what Miss Lerner Rubin was focusing on, and just, I love what's happening. I too have 2 Kinwood kids who are obsessed with this. One of my kids were the Mohawk cadre, and I heard about it. She was obsessed. But what I'm really curious, the only thing I'm wondering about this is how we're taking the information and the experience we have, the programs we have, and sharing it out. So some of the staff got to go and do the training. How are we sharing that knowledge to the rest of our staff? Some of our schools have the program. How are we bringing those programs to the rest of the school district?
So I can start talk about the staff. So our team that goes out and gets trained comes back and meets with a larger group, and they have time at every faculty meeting.
Great.
Every faculty meeting, the PBIS team presents for school-wide to everyone.
Perfect.
And each of the trainings, we have an MTSS advisory team made up of representatives from every level and supervisors and, you know, across departments. And after the trainings, we have a monthly sort of update on here are some of the topics for this month. The teacher flow chart. that was shared, that they each have a version of. That was something that was done in the summer, done in follow-up sessions, and then shared through all the principals' meetings. So we've created opportunities for turnaround sharing because it is important to us to learn as a system.
I think that's really important because one of the hard things we do as, I mean, I say we, but I'm not in the classroom, but as educators, that is the behavior part. And it's hard. We want our kids to have positive behavior interventions and not negative behavior ones where they're going to have consequences, and to really have that kind of support writ large for every student and for every teacher, frankly, because I know I'm not alone in having experienced teachers myself that struggled with classroom management and behavioral issues. And so it's a hard thing and it's a good thing, I think, that we're supporting teachers as much as we can in that way. And I think Dr. Sotner had more follow-up.
Yeah, I'm going to ping off of Abby's because I couldn't find the last question, and it was around that. How does this scale up to high school? And I know there's I think it's a special, I can't remember if it's a special ed parent group or ISC is having on peer positive behavioral support, peer and coaching. So it's out of Vanderbilt. It's also out of Penn. It looks at peer-to-peer coaching because it's the same exact thing you're doing, but for high school kids it works so much better when it's their peers, and then it's peer teaching and peer working together and support structures for positive behavior, but then it's peer coaching. And this has been around. I think I went to the first training that I remember on it 10 years ago, if not 15 years ago. But I know one of our community groups is having a training on this. So are you looking at kind of that work at the high school? You're not high school though, so sorry I asked you that question.
Right. So PBIS actually scales up K to 12. It is not an elementary program. While we're highlighting the elementary, we actually do have one of our middle schools right now in it, but it looks different at all levels, because you're right, because of the students that are involved. So when you get to the high school level, students are involved in the committees, they're involved in the decision-making of what is it gonna look like. Rewards look different. We don't hand out Kenwood cash, but there are reward systems traditionally at the high school. I've seen like you get a parking pass for whatever, so there's a lot of different things that you do with it.
You could sell that for a lot of good behavior at the high school
Oh, it
level,
works.
let me tell you.
Yes, in one of my prior districts, our high school was a PBIS school, and it worked. The system worked beautifully at the high school. You just have to be really thoughtful to make sure that the students are involved in the process because their voice is so important at that age. And also like your tier 2 and tier 3 looks different. They're involved in creating the lessons, creating the programs, because no matter what age group we're talking about, teaching the correct behavior is important, just like we teach English or math or science or social studies. So we have components of it at the high school at this point, but we're not a PBS. We're not piloting it at the high school yet. Yeah.
I'll look up that group, but I mean, you guys should take a look at it because it's been around for a while and it fits into this perfectly. And the data on it is through the roof that everybody rises in behavior and grades too.
Please pass it along.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's one of our own community groups, so it's even better.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else have a question? Okay, Sarah, go ahead. Sorry.
So is there a timeline or what does it look like rolling out to the other elementary schools in the district?
That's a good question. So the MTSS advisory team, it's a K-12 lens, so trying to figure out what's our next step as a district. And as I was sharing with that evaluation tool, people have different baselines, like you already heard, like somebody was saying the warm fuzzies, like there's certain things that are already in place in certain places. So trying to determine what's the next step for, perhaps another or other buildings doing the formal training, or taking on some of the learning that's coming through the learning of others. So those are conversations that'll happen this spring when we set our goals for next year, but that hasn't happened yet.
Okay. And then also kind of bringing it back to the linked it, the data locker sounds like it'll be good going forward. But as far as current data, at least for the 2 schools that have PBIS running right now, is there data that you have or that you've been looking into as far as a reduction in those unexpected behaviors with the implementation of PBIS?
Yeah. So we do have access to, obviously, to our SharePoint is where our discipline data is. It makes, we can export data from it, but it is challenging to really tease it out. Doesn't let us disaggregate to the level or degree that we would want to make affirmative statements saying that we absolutely see this has gone down or this has gone up or improved, so. But we're looking forward to Lincoln.
Yeah, I would agree with Sean. Like, we have SharePoint, but it takes a little bit to disaggregate the data. This will definitely help. Like, oh, we might want to do something different in our cafeteria, or we might want to do something different on our school buses. It'll be helpful when everything's in one place.
Okay, Ms. Garrison?
I'm just curious, how much free play do our students get in elementary school?
Free play?
Like recess?
So there's a physical activity period. So they have that, and then they have recess, and recess is, it's about 20, 25 minutes, depending on the grade level and how long it takes them to eat lunch and what time of year it is. Beginning of the year, it takes a little bit longer for like K and 1 to work their way through the lunchroom. And as the year goes on, they'll have a little bit longer. But some of the like they have the opportunity for free play there. Some may choose some coordinated play. But even within classrooms, like there may be opportunities for what students have choice in terms of, I'm thinking, for example, purposeful play that's happening in our K+ program, for example. So the students might have guided play, but there also may be opportunities where they can have some choice included. So I'm not sure
I wanna know
how comprehensive you're thinking.
How much time do the children have for autonomous play, that they're playing on their own terms, not being led by a teacher? Because a lot of research shows that, when they have an opportunity to play freely on the playground, that's their sort of physical activity, that a lot of behavior problems that we encounter could be eliminated if they have more liberty to play.
Yeah, so as Dr. Gaudioso referenced, we have that 15-minute physical activity period. And again, there's differing degrees of structure. Many times it's what you're describing, just opportunity for kids to go out and work things out on their own. Our recess captains are there. Our recess aides are there. Again, primarily for safety, their larger lens is making sure that everybody's safe. We encourage them to allow kids to do exactly what you're talking about. Like, let them, take them out to the kickball field, let them figure out how to do teams, let them figure out who's pitching, let them negotiate and navigate those things. Obviously, if they need to intercede, they will, but we do encourage that, that skill building that you're talking about by being there, being present, obviously, supervising, but also not micromanaging the kids on a minute by minute basis.
So right now, they're getting about 15 minutes.
So it's 15 minutes in the PA and then 25 minutes for recess.
Okay,
And
because
each grade level has 25-minute recess before lunch. That's every section is out at the same time, so that's an opportunity for those kids to intersperse with others from other classes and friends and so forth.
I'm just looking at like the American Pediatrics Association or whatever, they recommend that children get about 60 minutes of, this activity. I don't want to call it exercise because it's not supposed to be a formalized, aerobics class or something like that. But I think that a lot of times these issues that we have around behavior could be mitigated if they had more opportunities for play, similar to places like in Finland. That is a really big part of especially their elementary school curriculum.
All right, thank you. I think we're all set. Thank you so much to our team. Do we have any community comments specifically on this presentation? Because if we don't, then we will open it up to community comment on any topic. Ms. LaPera has the list. We're going to ask all of our students that wish to speak to come up first. Ms. LaPera, are they marked on the sheet, or should I just have the students come up?
I just think I see Nicholas and maybe, is it Harrison?
Okay, we have several students here, so,
But that signed up.
yeah, I think.
I told them the right student next to it, so.
Oh, okay. So if you're a student and you want to speak, I think we can just have everybody just line up and just go ahead. If you're a student, come up and speak first. Just go ahead, say your name and either what town you live in or what school you go to.
Yeah, hi, my name is Ava Mazzoni. I go to Harriton, and I'm a senior there. I have a script, if that's okay.
No, that's fine.
Sorry, I'm not nearly as verbose as everyone else in this room who has spoken so far, but I find it incredibly important to share my piece about the Japanese course. So as I said, I'm a student, like a senior student at Harrison High School, currently engaged in the Japanese program, and I'm deeply saddened to hear of the district's decision to cut such an important language. I know, Dr. Yanni, that you mentioned wanting an increased focus on student voices, so I wanted to share mine. Japanese is a major connection to a very valuable ally to our country. Our school has plenty of business courses, and Japan has a heavy influence in the market of pharmaceuticals, automotives, and technology, which is only growing in importance in today's world. Including or introducing Japanese before college opens up the ability for students to travel abroad and interact with the culture. More so, it can lead to job opportunities post-graduating in extremely sought-after companies and fields. Local to Lower Merion and within our own borders is the Japanese Language School of Philadelphia, which hosts language classes for expatriates and Americans alike. Within a mile of Lower Merion High School, where we are right now, is Maido, an authentic Japanese convenience store. We have enough Japanese individuals in our community that these locations are offered to begin with, and undoubtedly some of these expatriates reside within LMSD borders. It is beyond integral for a place of learning to represent its diverse student groups, and LMSD places large emphasis on making sure learning is global and not Eurocentric. However, when it comes to the languages offered, they are Eurocentric. Removing Japanese would render the high schools to only offer Latin, French, and Spanish, which are all Mediterranean European languages. Japanese is a language that allows students who don't otherwise see their culture throughout the school and represented to interact with and introduce their friends to it, as well as giving students the option to learn an Asian language. This course is dearly appreciated and loved by everyone I know who has taken it, including myself. I'm considering continuing my learning into college, and I'm hoping to learn a translation degree as well. On top of this course is a legacy of our beloved teacher Nakamura-sensei, and she worked so hard to teach us a beautiful language. I want her legacy in our district to be preserved and remembered. And as I understand it, the cutting of Japanese is due to a lack of qualified teachers. What was the process taken in the search, and is there any way the student body can help with that?
Thank you so much. I think we'll wait for Dr. Yanni and we'll get back to the group writ large once we've heard from the whole group. So thank you so much for your comments.
Hi, my name is Nico Leedy. I'm a senior. I'm at Harridan. I just want to talk a little bit about my experience with Japanese as well. It's a course that's very dear to me. I took it starting junior year with Nakamura-sensei. And I think that cutting this class is a mistake. I think that, I know we have a petition, and it has up to 1,300 signatures right now. It's a class that goes past just language learning. It's about culture. It's about diversity, and it's very important. I think that we look at this as more than just a class. It's an experience that's very unique to our school. We don't have many other classes, if any, for Asian culture, and it's just important that we take that into account, I think. Personally, I love that class. I'm going to be taking it in college, I'm sure, and it's just like my experience with it, I know will be similar with many people coming up, and I think that it's an experience that everyone should at least try or have, and it's much different from Spanish, from French, from Latin. It's a completely different, unique experience, and I think it's important that that maybe sometimes we look past the numbers that might take into account when cutting this class and look more at the experience that it gives to the kids and the students that take it. It means a lot more than just a normal class to me, and I'm sure to many other people. So yeah, that's all. Just wanted to speak a little bit on that. So.
Thank you so much.
All right, my name is Harrison Kobitz. I'm a freshman at Harridan, and I would also, along with them, like to express the importance of the Japanese course in the high schools. One thing about it is, it was mentioned a little bit before, Japanese culture being shared in an area like Lower Merion, where there are Japanese people living here, it's very important, and taking this course away takes away that opportunity to learn about this culture that isn't just America. And another thing, in our global studies classes, we talk about interregional development and spreading culture, and we talk about the need of this culture. And I think it was mentioned earlier that to show the usefulness of these courses outside of just the courses, this class shows that. It shows culture being spread throughout the entire world, along with the other language courses, of course, but that's only European. It was mentioned earlier that that means that we get no Asian representation in a school that has, I believe it was about 11% of the students at Harridan High School are Asian. LMSD, Lower Marion School District, yes, thank you, are Asian. And it's taking away an opportunity for us to learn about that culture again. It was mentioned earlier that there was a planned field trip for the elementary school kids to the Shofuso Japanese Cultural Center, and that I feel like if the elementary school kids are getting that exposure, why shouldn't it continue into high school as well? And yeah, the petition mentioned earlier, 1,300 signatures, showing the voices of the students and parents of our community. So, yes.
Thank you so much for your feedback. Do we have any other students that wanted to speak tonight? No? Okay, then if we have,
We do.
We'll hear from Ms. LaPera, who's coming up next.
Mary Schwingen, sorry if I mispronounce anybody, Michelle Vessel, then Lisa Prozitz.
That's so much shorter. Good evening. Thank you for being here. It's very late for you. I know that, and I really appreciate the work you do on behalf of our kids. I don't think you hear that enough. I'm here to speak as a parent of a student who's in Japanese 2, and since my child is a senior and she's my baby, I expected to never attend another meeting at 9:15 again in my life. And here I am to ask you to please consider not canceling the program, this very small program. My family is unusually international. We moved to Pennsylvania 17 years ago only for the French International School. That was how much we cared about foreign language, and it was the only one we could afford. Like many parents in Lower Merion, foreign language learning really matters to us, but unlike most of them, I actually have studied Japanese. And in my 20s, I spent a few years living in a small village in rural Japan. Living there was very, very lonely. It was very difficult. I'll tell you, it was the best and worst thing that I've ever done in many ways. But it was also absolutely magical despite the difficulty. More difficult than learning the language of Japanese was learning to understand the people I was living with. And they were so very different from those I'd grown up with. When my daughter finished French in 10th grade, she came home and announced that she wanted to take Japanese, and I didn't say anything, but I was completely against it because I know how difficult it is, and I was really skeptical about what this program could possibly do. It takes so many years. So I let her do it because she's the boss of her, but I didn't actually truly favor it. What I found as the program progressed was a program that was really beautifully designed and structured. The first year was slow and mindful, and it gave them time to change gears in a way that you can't understand unless you go through the process, because you have to learn a completely different way of ordering the words in your brain. So it adapted really profoundly to a difficult language acquisition task. The languages taught at LM, Latin, French, Spanish, and Japanese, my kids did all of them to varied degrees of success. But all of them bring something to the district, there's no doubt. But what the Japanese program brings is different. It teaches the kids not only to decode and encode a radically different way of communicating, but it teaches them a radically different way of thinking. I didn't think they'd be able to get as far with that as they did without leaving town. The Japanese ethos, the emphasis on self-discipline, respect, and quiet mastery, all of those things are really essential to Komano Sensei's program. And the quiet mastery is something kids here would benefit from because so much of it is high pressure mastery. It's really, the program is really good for them in a different way. It's something that's more important than any academic subject. In LM, the Japanese program is literally the only door that opens towards Asia that goes beyond the States and Europe to a much more complicated world and many more diverse ways of thinking. The kids don't just cross the ocean, but they go so much further. So I just ask you to try to keep the program. It's way better than I thought it would be. It's remarkable. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback.
Michelle, then Lisa Prosnitz, then Ren Egawa, and Scott, Nakamura. I think that's what it says.
Hi, I'm not here about the Japanese program. I wasn't aware of it, but it sounds wonderful. I'm actually here about the course selection, and in doing that, I had a couple questions. Well, really just one. There's some classes that look like they're available for kids to choose, but I'm hearing that they might not really be available, that maybe they haven't been taught in several years, and they don't really have a curriculum, maybe. Heroes and Monsters, I think these are under core English classes or electives. So Heroes and Monsters and Sports and Literature. Those were the two that I'm referring to. And I was just wondering, is that true? And yeah, because that's what I heard. So that's why I wanted to ask, is that true? And if they aren't, like, my son was told he could pick it, but it probably, you don't get enough students, so it wouldn't be available, so he shouldn't pick it because he would just be told later that he'd have to pick something else, that they didn't get enough kids to fill it. So
They're all available. They don't all run. It depends on, it honestly does depend on enrollment. There is curriculum for all of this. There's six electives. They're part of our 6 elective base. Actually, sports and literature, I think we have several sections of it at Lower Merion at this point. I don't know if we have it at any Harrington at this point. It just really depends, but everything in the course catalog is available. Almost everything in the course catalog is available to students at both schools. Swimming obviously is not a class that we offer at Harrington, right? IB is not a class that we offer at Lower Merion, but for the most part, 99% of the course catalog is available to all students within the district. Yeah. And there is curriculum for it.
Right, okay.
Yes.
So like, it has been taught recently?
Yes.
Those two?
Yeah. Not necessarily both schools, but yes.
Oh, okay. So I guess I'm referring to Harrington.
Why don't you and I chat offline about it?
Thank you.
Okay.
And I would say if you.
I didn't know who to ask, so
No,
that's why
let
I thought
you and I-
curriculum meeting, I'll come.
Yeah.
You know, okay.
Absolutely the right place, and I would say that if your child really wants that class to run, I would encourage them to recruit their friends so that there are enough kids in a section to run it.
I think they're being told that it's not, because he's the one who told
Well,
me this, so that's why I don't
Viva
know.
la
I don't know how many
revolution,
are really
like,
interested.
let them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey there, Lisa Prosnitz, Penn Valley, and I am here about the Japanese class. And I'm here representing students both currently and previously in the Japanese course offered by Lower Merion School District. And as you may be aware, actually you are aware because it's been mentioned, that there's a petition with over 1,000 signatures. Signees, I know, were encouraged to attend the meeting over Zoom and speak, but it doesn't seem like that's actually possible with the committee meeting. So I decided to come at 5:30 tonight and quickly had my student reach out to a few classmates. I wanted to share with you some of the things that they said, but I first have a quote from a recent graduate. It was the one class I enjoyed during my school day. It brought me so much happiness. It was an experience, a cultural experience. And not just learning a language, I waited years to be able to take it and would have taken it from elementary school if given the opportunity. It was the one class where the teacher saw all of us as just students, including those with differences. I learned so much in Japanese, far more than 4 years of Latin and French before that. Another student says, Japanese provides a pathway into one of the world's leading economies that I can be a businessman in. Another student says, Japanese allows us to not just learn the language, but be engaged in the culture and feel a part of a community there. Another student, when I walk into my Japanese class, I know that what I'm about to learn is not just going to be the language, but I'll be able to experience it from the mindset of a student in Japan due to the environment that Kumano-sensei creates for us. She does a wonderful job including everybody and sharing her culture in hopes that one day we'll love it like she does, which allows for a learning experience that cannot be found anywhere else in the school. I appreciate learning a unique language. The friendly and polite cultural environment is very inclusive and inviting. Kumano-sensei is a lovely teacher who allows us to make mistakes because that's how we learn. Kumano-sensei is a really kind and caring teacher and genuinely wants us to improve as people, not just as students. I will say that there are also a bunch of quotes from the petition, which I will spare you right now in the interest of time. But just a few little. Japanese represents inclusivity and prepares students for future opportunities in business and beyond. Learning Japanese was a life-changing experience for me. And I invite you guys to find the petition and read some of the comments there. I am asking you that you reconsider discontinuing this beloved language class. Now is not the time to scale back foreign language offerings within Lower Merion School District. Proficiency in foreign languages will be one of the keys to our students' success in an increasingly interconnected world and globalized economy. Japan has a population of around 125 million people and has the fourth largest economy in the world. Japan has been and will remain a major trading partner and the most important ally of the United States in Asia. At a time when the world is becoming more and more divided, when people are having an increasingly challenging time communicating and more cultural barriers exist than they should, our Japanese program helps build bridges in an inclusive and immersive cultural environment while offering a unique linguistic challenge that our Romance languages do not. And I will also say that listening to tonight's presentation about mirrors, windows, and sliding doors, it feels even more significant and imperative that we not lose our Japanese language. It would be a culturally significant loss that I am truly hoping that we can avoid. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Prosnitz.
Good evening. My name is Ren Egawa, and I'm a U.S. citizen, but I'm a proud Lower Merion resident and since 2009. And I will also represent Japan American Society of Greater Philadelphia as its board's vice president here tonight. Like many in this room, I'm here because of the school's decision to terminate the Japanese language program. I stand before you with a heavy heart, but with also hope. And let me explain what the hope could be. But I have to first say that I share your deep commitment to our students' success, including my daughter, and I pour out the leadership that you have shown in making Lower Merion School District one of the best school districts in the nation. And however, I believe the decision to terminate our Japanese language program without exploring all options, I'm sure you did, but I think there are more to do, and engaging the community is a path we shouldn't take. As you know, our Japanese language program has been woven into the fabric of our community for over 30 years. Some people say 20 years, but I checked it was actually 30 years, impacting nearly 100 students this year alone. And eliminating such a cherished program that you just heard from everyone is a major change. And for such a major change to take place, there is usually a very structured, public, and transparent process. This major change, I believe, was decided without public discussion, and it feels off, frankly. So while the loss of Mrs. Nakamura is deeply felt, her passion for Japanese language should inspire us to find solutions, not abandoning the program entirely. This is where I believe effective leadership comes in and navigating challenges and find ways to sustain such a valuable programs. I look at the school's letter. My daughter already graduated, so I was only able to get a copy of the letter. The letter cited only one challenge, not 2 or 3 or 4, but only one challenge to terminate the program. That is the challenge in finding certified teachers. And I would like to ask, have you reached out to organizations such as the Japan American Society? George Leon, who is not here tonight, is the president of the board of directors of the society, and I'm the vice president. We both are Lower Merion's residents. He gave me the permission to speak on behalf of him, as well as the Japan American Society, who actually oversees Shofuso, that we stand ready to assist in finding solutions to this single challenge. Right now, my understanding is there's only one reason why this program is terminated. So in conclusion, let's reverse the course. Please engage the community, explore all the options, even though you may think you have explored all of them, and collaborate to overcome recruitment challenges. Together, I believe we can ensure this valuable program thrives, not just survive. And so please accept our Japan American Society's offer to help and schedule a first face-to-face meeting with us. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback and your offer of assistance. Ms. LaPera, who's
The
next?
next gentleman is not a resident of the district.
I'm sorry, it's board policy to only allow residents of Lower Merion Township to speak at public meetings and Narberth, my apologies, to speak at our public meetings. So who's our next on our list?
That would be the final person. He's related to the teacher that passed away. It's her husband. I didn't know if it was the husband or brother. I mean,
Nope, thanks. Good evening, my name is Scott Nakamura. I'm here on behalf of my wife, Hanai Nakamura, who you may recognize as the Japanese language department for this school district. I'm here to give you firsthand impressions of what she did for this language program, which your students have expressed. Firstly, I'd like to thank the school board for the inclusion of Japanese in the world language program at Lower Merion, and the support of my wife during her teaching tenure in the school district, even while undergoing her chemo treatments. Since taking over the Japanese language program from Mariko Lafleur, her goal was not to just teach Japanese language, but to open the window to the students of Lower Merion about the people, culture, and traditions of Japan. Even through COVID and her own failing health, he wanted Japanese to remain a vital program at Lower Merion. And you see many here before you who feel the same way. Many of the students' familiarity with Japan was what they've gleaned from Japanese pop culture, such as anime, manga, and video games. Her goal was to expand the traditions, the horizons through the use of language. She wanted to show them that Japan was more than sushi, ramen, and Studio Ghibli. And then as a result, she developed a curriculum including cooking, Japanese calligraphy, traditional songs, customs, and even field trips to the Japanese market in New Jersey. Encouraging to experience Japan in the US, be it visiting the local Japanese market, attending Ghibli film festivals at the local theater, or participate in the Cherry Blossom Festival. Of course, I would be remiss to mention the school trip to Japan. The program she developed was centered on integrating Japanese through cultural exploration. The success of the Japanese language program Laura Marion experienced historically by multiple students participating in and receiving accolades in various Japanese language competitions, which is no small feat. Some students even continued the Japanese language studies in college and even eventually finding jobs in Japan. In fact, one individual from the Lower Marine School District obtained an advisory role in the Japanese government, helping to develop and implement changes for better access to individuals with disabilities in public areas in Japan. All this would not have been possible had it not been for the Lower Merion School District's Japanese language program. To be clear, I'm not here to defend the legacy of my wife's accomplishments in fostering the program, but I am here to defend the merits of continuing the inclusion of this unique program. Although we live in Upper Merion, Japanese is not even offered in our school district. At the start of every academic year, my wife would ask the students why they wanted to learn Japanese. Of course, the answers always consisted of video games, manga, anime, but one common answer was that they were tired of learning French, Spanish, or Latin. And I mean, have you spoken to a dead Roman recently? Sorry, Veronica. Thanks.
Sorry, thank you.
Many said they studied these languages for so many years, and yet they felt they learned nothing and weren't even proficient. Some who struggled in the Romance languages thrived in Japanese. The Japanese learning program at Lower Merion was much more than a budget line item. The continued inclusion of Japanese in the Lower Merion School District curriculum not only provides language diversity to the school's world language program, but also offers an equitable opportunity for all students of the school district to learn Japanese. Otherwise, the world language program would be reduced to the program for Western European Romance languages and dead Romans. Sorry, Veronica. On behalf of Hanai, I ask that you please consider all available options at your disposal, many of which are even here available in this room, in keeping this vital window open for the students. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and for Ms. Nakamura's service to our district. I believe that's everyone who wanted to comment. I think Dr. Yanni wanted to say a few words in response to everyone's feedback on the Japanese program.
I'm sorry that I didn't get to know Hanai more than I did just, coming to the district this year, and, truly honor the work that she did and the program that she inherited and also then built. So my comments tonight are not about any specific person, but in more of a broad sense. So the question was asked, have we looked for appropriately certified teachers? And so I want to go through the different organizations that I talked to. So we started with the Pennsylvania Department of Education. There are 3 Japanese, I'm sorry?
The last we checked, Jess.
Last we checked. Well, the last we checked was 2 weeks ago. So 3 certified Japanese teachers in the state. All 3 are currently working in other districts. I spoke with a representative at the Delaware Department of Public Instruction as well as the New Jersey Department of Public Instruction to see if there were any leads on potential teachers. I talked with the Delaware Valley Teachers of Japanese, and I have another call set up with them on Thursday. Intermediate Unit 8, Appalachian Area, Intermediate Unit 8 out of Western Pennsylvania. They coordinate languages for the entire state. I talked to a representative from the American Association of Teachers of Japanese at Georgetown University. The thing that I hear over and over again is we have a pipeline to get teachers certified, but we don't have certified teachers. So that's where we are right now. The teacher that we have in the program right now is on an emergency certification. And there are certain requirements that individual would have to fulfill to remain or to become fully certified. We don't have the option to do another emergency certification. It took some, without going into too much, it took some wrangling with the Department of Education this year. So what I'm saying to you tonight, I just want to manage everyone's expectations. I can't promise anything here tonight, but I'm being as transparent as possible. And so I just want everyone to know that we have spoken to multiple organizations, and it does not appear at this moment that there is someone that would be appropriately certified in Pennsylvania for the position.
And just as a sort of long-term strategy to all of our passionate students that took that class and feel really passionate about it, if this is in your heart, go, learn Japanese, get fluent, get a teacher certification, and come back to us. We want to hire you. We want to see your faces again, because this is the kind of program we would love to have here, and we're trying to make it work. But it is, as we've made clear, a really complicated issue. I think we'll keep the dialogue open about looking to fill that position wherever we possibly can, because it's not something that we really want to see go, and it's not something that would necessarily be a permanent end to it. It's just, we literally can't offer a class if we don't have a teacher to teach it. So please be that teacher and come back to us.
I'm always appreciative of public comment, but in particular the students. And so Ms. LePere has the names of the students, so I'm going to connect with each of you tomorrow. It will be a school day. It may be a virtual school day, but it'll be a school day. It'll be a school day nonetheless. You know, I've been a superintendent now for 8 years, and often we hear, I know you're looking at me thinking, he's so young looking, how could he be a superintendent for 8 years? I'm sorry, a little bit of levity at 9:40 at night. One of the things that I've heard over the years is French, Spanish, German, French, Spanish, Latin, you know, we have to expand, you know, a little bit. One of the things that I've asked the teaching and learning team to do is to take next year to do an evaluation of what other types of languages should we have and when should those languages start. Our district makes a large commitment to world language now with our students as they move to the middle school. And so if we're going to have another language, is there a way that we can embed that in? We've had requests for Mandarin. We've had requests for Hebrew. We now have the ability to offer potentially American Sign Language. There are any number of other languages that may emerge through this process. Japanese may still emerge through this process. So I just want to give everyone the comfort that there is going to be an evaluation going on. It's not something like we're saying, hard stop, it goes away, and you know you're left with what we have in the course catalog. So Dr. McGloin and her team will be doing that evaluation. We've got some significant things happening next year. This is going to be one more thing that we do next year to take a look at, you know, how do we move forward with language? Because I think I don't want to limit us to what we have right now. I think there's endless possibilities if we do a comprehensive evaluation and see absolutely what we can offer.
Thank you for that, and thank you to everyone who came out to speak and give us your thoughts and feelings on all sorts of things happening in the district. The next meeting of the Curriculum Committee of the Board will be Monday, March 11th in this room at 7 p.m. Thank you so much. We're adjourned.
Sorry, one more quick announcement, sorry. ISC Hot Topics tomorrow morning at 9:30 in the admin building or online on Zoom. And they can find the link where, Lisa? They can find the link on social media. You'll post it on Facebook groups and perfect, awesome,
Usually
thank
it's
you.
also on the website, correct?
Or on the calendar, that's a good part too.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Good night.